Live from downtown San Francisco, this is 95.7 The Game.
All right, what is going on, everyone? Happy Saturday morning, and welcome into the first 2024-2025 edition of Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone with you for 3 hours, as always, 9 to noon. It's basketball season, Devone. What's happening, my man?
What's going on with you? Good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, that's true. It's been a couple of weeks. I'm happy to see your face. I'm happy to see Cam Williams' face. He's been here working the graveyard shift because the Warriors have been kicking ass all through the night. I know everyone might have been preoccupied with the World Series, but quietly, the Warriors are 2-0. The Warriors are off to a nice little start to begin the season.
8-0 if you're going back to the preseason.
That's right. Well, I was going to say, because we were tossing around a lot of different ideas about the Warriors and what they could be, what they can't be, and clearly they got a lot in front of them with 80 games left. But I guess, what did you make of the preseason? And do you feel like anything's really changed so far for you?
Oh, well, yeah, a lot of things have changed, clearly. This team just doesn't even look like, I don't even recognize this Warrior basketball team. It's very, very different. I think the big question is it sustainable? Can you do this over the course of the next 5 to 6 months? Can you do it for 82 games and go this deep into a roster? I don't know that it's ever been done before. You talked about the Warriors back in the day when they were winning titles with Rick Barry and company, but this is going to be a challenge. And I guess the question is this just for now? Is that what we're missing, that they're going deep for now, or is this really going to be the template going forward?
I mean, it seems like it's going to be the template moving forward. That's what Steve Kerr wants to do, wants to play 12. And I don't know. I wonder, Dan, yeah, I mean, but the big question is, how sustainable is it? Like, how realistic is it to think about a team that is going to play 12 dudes? When you think about a typical postseason or playoff rotation, there's like 8, 9 guys. I think a lot of teams don't have the ability to go 12 deep, but I'm just curious what fans have made of the first couple of games, and even going back to the preseason. Does it reflect the 6-0 start to the preseason? I mean, do you take anything away from that? How sustainable are the Warriors right now? And, of course, the phone lines are always open at 888-957-9570. Also the number for the Comcast Business text line. But can the Warriors really run a 12-man rotation? I think that's what they're trying to answer. And I think, first and foremost, the start that they've gotten out to, they're beaten 2, in my opinion, bottom feeders. They won at Portland, and then last night they killed the Jazz 127 to 86. Those are wins you need, but I think when you're playing, Dan, a lot of guys, a fast start is important because it builds buy-in. And I think they had buy-in from the preseason. You talk about, or you hear the kumbaya from new guys, and Buddy Hield, who's been sensational in his first 2 games, DeAnthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, a lot of veterans who can come in. They got know-how. They know how to play. But I think in general for the entire team, because when guys are getting inconsistent playing time or not getting a ton of minutes in general, you need to win early in order to justify the decisions that you're going to make as a coaching staff.
I'd agree. I think it's all feel good right now. But if I was to go down the roster and play a little game with you.
Yeah.
Was this Sesame Street? I think it was. Which one of these doesn't belong with the others? Was that? I believe it was.
Okay.
Do you remember Sesame Street, or was that before?
I do. My boy, Big Bird.
Yeah, exactly. So when I tell you about egos being checked at the door, and in order for this to work, you've got to, as you mentioned, buy in. That's the key clause into all of this. So when I go through this roster, when I go through the players that got double-digit minutes last night, and we talk about 12 deep, this is essentially the 12. And you tell me which one of these that you might have an issue with buy-in, accepting a role, recognizing that you have a limited role. You tell me which one of these could be problematic. Don't say anything until I'm done. Audience, are we ready? Shh. Cam, can we have some music, please? Can we have a little, which one of these doesn't belong with the others? No, Cam, you're good. Draymond Green, Jonathan Kaminga, Trayce Jackson-Davis, Steph Curry, Andrew Wiggins, Brandon Podziemski, Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson, Moses Moody, DeAnthony Melton, Kevon Looney, Gary Payton II, and Lindy Waters III. Of all of those players, which one of those would you associate with accepting a role, recognizing that they're a part-time player, and then maybe one that could be somewhat problematic.
Well, Lindy Waters is a problem child. I mean, that guy's not going to be able to handle coming off the bench. No, although I don't know if it was a Freudian slip by you, Devone, or whether it was just completely happenstance. But I think the first two guys you mentioned are the ones that you probably have some questions about.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
What do we have for the winner?
Jonathan Kaminga and Draymond Green.
Well, Draymond, I think, because he's a veteran, although Draymond's good, if it stays this way and he's getting 20 minutes, he just doesn't like to sit on the bench. But I think he recognizes, because he's so smart and he sees big picture, and especially with a guy that's in his mid-30s, that they'll be, quote-unquote, again, buy-in. Jonathan Kaminga, that could be an issue, because I think he's at a stage in his career where he's young enough, he wants the contract, he wants the bag, and he wants the ball, and he wants to show everyone that he can ball, and he wants to be on the floor. I'm not sure that, again, getting back to the operative phrase today, buy-in, could be an issue with Jonathan Kaminga going forward.
Well, moving into the season, like we did this exercise earlier in the week before the opener in Portland, like your five biggest questions about the Warriors. Would you say JK is your biggest question?
I'd say 2 games in, yes.
Okay, so preseason, I think any player that plays for a contract, if they haven't done it before, I have questions. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. Doesn't mean that you're not unselfish. I just wonder how hard that must be for a player who's 22, who is coming off of a great season, who we still don't really know much about his game. He's not fully formed, but you have to make decisions based on what you've seen so far. I think how Jonathan Kaminga handles his first contract year in the NBA was my biggest question. And I think through 2 games, it's impossible to, bring down an overarching statement on what his contract year is going to be. But there's already a couple things that you can tell. Like, I was fascinated with the Steve Kerr decision to start Wiggins and Kaminga together. And I think it's interesting that of all the things that have happened for the Warriors, it feels like the thing with the biggest question is the starting lineup. And that also gives me some pause, because we talked a lot last year, Dan, about how good the bench was and about how players were able to help the non-Steph minutes. Well, at the end of the day, if your starting five's not very good, I don't know how you're going to compete with the top dogs. And through 2 games, it feels like, probably because of how good the rest of the team's been, the weakest part of this roster has been the first 5 minutes of the basketball game.
And upwards to 10 to 11 guys are playing in the first quarter.
Yeah, they played, well, because of the last 20 seconds, they snuck in a 12th man yesterday, but they played 11 in the first quarter against Portland. They played 12 against Utah. Like, Kerr's not BSing. Like, he's going to play a ton of dudes.
To your point, though, about the starting lineup, the question that I have, you're right, it's at the 2 spot, because I don't know if we were all, who of us were considering Jonathan Kaminga? It was Podziemski, it was Moody, it was Buddy Hield. I guess Wiggins was in that conversation. But I do like it, because they're taller, defensively, he can give you, he's more adept at guarding multiple players, whether it be at the 2, the 3, even the 4. So he gives you height at that 2 spot. And Andrew Wiggins, this version of Andrew Wiggins you can buy. If there's going to be a change again in the starting 5, you're right. It comes down to Wiggins playing with Kaminga. And it ain't going to be Wiggins. It'll be Wiggins switching to the 3, back to his regular position, and then either Podziemski or Buddy Hield getting the 2, and Jonathan Kaminga is going to be the odd man out. And as I look at the numbers last night, and really I think deep down those 2 sort of know it, although they'll publicly never admit it, but I think Kaminga and Wiggins know that they're both playing for their starting lives. And Kaminga last night in the 18 minutes, he gives you the 2 points, but the 1 rebound is something that you have to circle, because it's been the Achilles heel, right, on this guy. And Wiggins, he had 13 boards last night.
Yeah, I think, look, as we move deeper into the show, I do think that that's naturally a conversation that's going to come up. What do they do about their 2 wings, if anything? I mean, the benefit that the Warriors are playing with right now is the fact that they're 2-0. And oh, by the way, they're plus 77. They've beaten teams by a combined 77 points, the most in NBA history, to start a season. So now they bludgeoned the Portland Trailblazers, who seem disinterested with winning basketball games. I think the Utah Jazz, though Utah's a difficult place to play, They went down to the wire with Memphis in their opener. People were a little bit higher on them. I don't think they're very good. And in fact, one thing that I did write down last night about that Utah game, shame on anybody that thought that Lauri Markkanen was going to be the answer for this basketball team. Now, we found out that plan A was actually Paul George and Lauri Markkanen, which the Warriors would have had to invest basically every single one of their pieces or capital into. But I'm sorry, I never saw it with that guy. I don't.
You sure about that? If I was to revisit these conversations, I could have sworn it was me against just a swath of people here at 95.7 The Game, that Lauri Markkanen was a mistake, Paul George was a mistake. I even went as far as Kevin Durant being a mistake.
We differed on the George thing, but that was more about getting a superstar. Lauri Markkanen is not a superstar.
No.
He's never played in the postseason. I'm sorry. For what the Warriors were going to have to give up, that was never going to be
and pay him.
He was not the missing piece.
Yeah, I agree.
And he may not still be the missing piece because they're not going to be able to go trade for him in a year. So they killed the Utah Jazz last night, and it's largely because of their second unit. Buddy Hield looks like a Klay Thompson replacement. I'm sorry. I do think a lot of it comes down to, along the lines of the Markkanen conversation, I just don't think a lot of people watch Utah basketball, and I can't really blame them. But I think the idea of these players creates what we think about their games and how they'll fit with the Warriors, who, of course, you and I watch a ton of. Buddy Hield is pretty unfamiliar with his game. I know he could fill it up, but he'd only played up until last season for bad teams. Last season, he was with Indiana. I thought it was a little suspect that they traded him and got better, ended up making a run to the conference finals. And then he basically got benched in Philadelphia up until they had no choice but to go to him in the postseason. And, of course, they got eliminated in the first round. So Buddy Hield was a bit of a wild card for me. I wasn't really sure what they were going to get from him. I don't know if he could defend. I don't know if he could pass. I don't know if he could do anything, but he could shoot.
Oh, no doubt.
That's all I care about, because what he does alongside Steph and has done, granted for 2 games, he's not going to make 11 threes and shoot 60% every single week, but he could fill it up, man.
He can, but just, I don't want to throw water on everything here, but if you know Buddy Hield and if you followed Buddy Hield's career, there's another shoe that's going to drop, and he can get cold, and he can also go in the other direction where he can't throw it in the ocean. That's just Buddy Hield. But I would say primarily most shooters sort of live like that, right? But the thing about Buddy Hield, and sometimes it's just a matter of getting unlocked, right? Just to give you the football analogy, we talk about Sam Darnold. It's just about getting with the right system, getting with the right people. The reason why you always had sort of an inkling that this could work with someone like that, a Buddy Hield, is because typically, whether it's with Sacramento, whether it's Indiana, or whether it's with Philadelphia or the other teams that he's played with, when he's on the floor, Buddy Hield is doing one thing, and you're focused defensively on Buddy Hield shooting. Here with the Warriors, Steph Curry draws that crowd. And Buddy Hield has said as much. I've never had this many open looks. It's basically, bro, catch and shoot. We're going to reverse the basketball, and you're going to be standing on the wing. Just make your shot. He's really never had that sort of marching orders in his career. It's usually, here comes Buddy Hield. Well, we know what it is that he's going to do. He's going to shoot, so let's run 2 guys at him. Here, it's as though, obviously, that gravitational pull towards Steph Curry and Buddy Hield, you're going to get an opportunity. He's making the most of it.
Well, yeah, right now everybody in the Warriors is making the most of their opportunities.
But can we just admit that he's not going to shoot 65% from 3 for the rest of the year?
Well, yeah, of course. Of course.
So this is going to level out at some point, fans.
But he's going to keep chucking.
No doubt.
And that's what he does. In fact, I think the reason why he ended up getting benched in Philadelphia was because of one of those extended stretches where he could make a 3 for like 8 straight games. Like, dude, we can't have you out there taking 10 shots a game if you're not going to be able to find net. And that's eventually going to come. But I do think that's why the depth or the 12-man rotation that this team offers, Dan, is one that is built potentially to sustain some of those elongated stretches or cold stretches, not specifically from Buddy Hield, but from anybody, because Kerr has so many options. Right now, against those 2 teams, you could press any button, and I think that they generally work. Now, I don't know how well they work to produce basically 2 40-point wins, but I think the Warriors with how much depth they have, they're a little more injury proof. I think they're more cold streak proof. And it also is going to be able to keep some of those veteran players, a la Curry and Draymond, I think, healthier throughout the entire season. And not just because Curry hasn't played in 2 straight fourth quarters. That's going to change. But over the course of 82 games, I do think it makes it easier for Steve Kerr to hit his mark with Curry, which is to play him 32 minutes a night. And then for Draymond, slowly over, his minutes are going to come down from where they've been in years past. If Draymond's playing 28 to 30 minutes a night, I think that's perfect for him because he still shows and has shown that he can be a defensive force. And I think that the starting lineup actually, to get back to our first conversation, the starting lineup to me is less about Kaminga and Wiggins, although they'll have to figure that out. But it's about prioritizing the front line with Trayce Jackson-Davis and Draymond Green. And TJD last night, 6 for 6, 9 rebounds. Like he's just going to clean up offensively, and then what he and Draymond can do defensively is really where I think the strength of this team lies. And what we saw down the stretch of last season, honestly.
Trayce Jackson-Davis, and I said this last year, has become my favorite Warrior. I love watching that guy play.
I know you do.
He's got great hands. He's smart. He's good around the basket.
He's got a chin strap now.
And what does that mean? Oh, does he?
Yeah.
I didn't notice. He's a baller, man. You got to like players like that. He's young. That's the other thing. And not to say that I told you so, but damn it, I told you so. A year ago, I constantly was beating this drum that the Warriors had to get younger. And now what you're seeing, that this team, it's a bunch of 20-year-olds, basically, that are at the heart of contributing. Trayce Jackson-Davis now getting minutes, Podziemski getting minutes, DeAnthony Melton's in his mid-20s. We know about Kaminga. We know about Moody. And these boys get up and down the floor. The worst thing, one of the glaring statistics that jumped out at the Warriors from a year ago is how bad they were in transitional defense. And that's just typical for a team that's old. Klay Thompson did not want it, and nor did Chris Paul. They're not turning their butts and running back the other way. And even if they are, they're getting beat up the floor. These guys can go. The energy is palpable. Would if you were to ask me, Ev, what jumps out at you? That's it. It's like, look at these guys. There's the energy and the speed of this basketball team is so different from what it is that we've seen in years past.
Well, and I think that's because they had an extended offseason. It's funny. I think that the player who's probably looked the slowest, and it's because he's also 36, but it might be Curry. It's because he played this summer. He played a lot in the Olympics. He played a lot of basketball. Everyone else, they didn't have to worry about a postseason run. They got bounced in the play-in. And I think that's going to lead to a hot start. I feel like that's going to lead to a strong start for them because you're right. They do look well-rested. They do look faster. They look longer. They look younger. And it is as much about the personnel changes that they made this offseason, and credit to Mike Dunleavy Jr., as it is, they're fresh. It also seems like this team knows how to play together a bit more than last season. And we can get into the comments that Curry made after the Portland game in just a little bit about what a healthy ego is. I don't know if it was much a shot at Klay Thompson as everybody was making it out to be, but I think the Warriors, this team has healthy egos. They want to compete. They obviously want their minutes, but winning basketball games is more important to them. And I think that was prevalent in the preseason, not because I think one of the games the Lakers didn't even play their top 6 guys. They played a Kings team everyone's just trying to find themselves. But I do think that when you win as many games as they do in the preseason, what I took away from that was they're connected. They're more on the same page than the team across from them. Are they more talented? That's going to play out over 82 games. But they're more connected, and there seems to be more cohesiveness on this year's team than especially the last 2 years' teams. And really, the only question that I think they had coming into this year was about Kaminga's contract. And that's still up in the air, but there's so many less distractions that they have to deal with entering a season than they have the past 2 seasons.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Klay Thompson, and we don't want to kick dirt on this guy because everybody loves Klay.
He just made 6 threes in his first game.
That was fun. Yeah, and that's another guy like that of Buddy Hield, where you talk about gravitational pull. Everybody's watching Luka, everybody's watching Kyrie. And if you remember Dallas a year ago, against Boston in the NBA Finals, they would reverse the ball and nobody could shoot. They didn't have that guy. Now it's Klay Thompson. I've never seen him that wide open for that many threes, and that's going to be his life in Dallas. It's a perfect fit. But what Dallas is going to find out, which the Warriors found out, is that transitional defense, along with Luka and along with Kyrie, defense is going to pretty much determine just how far that team is going to go. But yeah, they're very good because Klay's in a perfect spot. But when you think about Klay, he doesn't fit in what this Warrior team is doing right now. Because the one guy that you talked about, healthy ego, Klay Thompson was always about himself. And that's not a bad thing because that's the guy who scored 37 in a quarter. That's the guy we fell in love with. But Klay Thompson is very much about getting up my shots, making sure that, I become that guy that he was aware of the headlines that he's Steph Curry, that he's Klay Thompson, and you shoot the three as well, if not better than anybody that's ever done it. You could always tell when he walked onto the court, though, I got one tonight. I hit my first two, feed me. And now you look at this team, and it's all a bunch of role players. The question I want to get into, though, I think if you were really pull back the layers and get into this, and we can maybe do it after the break, I still think the big $50,000 question remains. And that is when Steph Curry comes off the floor, or should Steph, as you talked about, who's played so much basketball over the last year, go down with an injury, who is it? Who are we relying on, or have we been able to anoint or locate those players that you feel comfortable with, they're going to pick up that scoring load? Or is it going to be 10 guys giving you 8 to 12 points? I think that's still, to me, that question hasn't been answered despite what it is that Buddy Hield's been able to do.
No, I don't think it's been answered either. And this idea that you're going to have 6 or 7 guys in double digits every night, I don't necessarily buy it. Now, the one thing about Curry, and again, I think it kind of begs the question, and I'll just throw it out to our listeners at 888-957-9570. Warriors this week with Evan Giddings and Dan Devone. How much stock are you putting into these first 2 games? How much stock are you buying in the Warriors based on what you've seen against a paltry Portland team and a Utah team that probably by midseason is going to wave the white flag? And I'm talking about Cooper. So how much stock are you taking from these 2 wins? Because you talked about Curry and looking for secondary options. In the first 2 games, Dan, he's shooting below 40%.
Yeah.
I mean, he's shooting 35% from 3. He's averaging 18 points in 26 minutes.
It when Buddy Hield comes off the floor.
or when Buddy Hield eventually goes through one of his dry spells. Who is going to score for the Warriors? Because the first 2 games, the leading scorer has been Buddy Hield. It looks like he's playing at Oklahoma right now. But that's not always going to be the case. Where do the Warriors find that other scoring? Or maybe they don't need to. So again, how much stock are you taking in from these first 2 games? And I also think, are you really buying that the Warriors will be able to effectively run this 12-man rotation for an extended period of time? This is already coming in from the 949 on the Comcast Business text line. They look fast, strong, rested, and fun to watch. That last part, I think, is the biggest thing that's jumped out to me. And it also kind of leaked in from the preseason. They are fun to watch. Now, I realize they're winning and they're kicking ass against 2 teams that aren't supposed to be very good. They got the Clippers on Sunday. Next week, they play a New Orleans team that's pretty good. We'll get a better idea of who the Warriors are by the next time that you and I talk here on Warriors This Week. But overall, they do look like a more fun watch than last year. And I haven't really pinpointed why yet. But I think it has to do with the fact that just as a whole, they feel freer.
I think it's because of the multiple faces that you're seeing. We've watched Warrior basketball, and this is pretty typical for just about every NBA basketball team. You go, maybe 8, 9 deep? The Warriors, when they were winning titles, we could count them. Like, we knew exactly what was going to happen. Livingston comes in at a certain time, Bogut, or Festus Ezeli, here comes Iguodala, and that was the rotation. Now it's like 3 different teams. Now it's like you got 3 different starting lineups. And all of these guys are contributing. They're all basically role players right now. And again, I think what's really entertaining is the buy-in, that every one of these guys recognizes that they have a role and they're okay with their limited minutes, except for Jonathan Kaminga, who continues to be the problem child. And we'll stay on that throughout the entire show.
Oh, man.
Because we do need, I do think that has to be resolved. And I think he's playing his way out of that starting lineup, which might be the best thing for him. If Podziemski comes in at the 2, or even Moody at the 2, and you slide Wiggins down to the 3, and now here comes Jonathan Kaminga, because he's going to get just as many minutes coming off the bench as if he was a starter. And I think, what's fun about this is that you have to prove yourself. You don't have any set minutes. Like, you have to prove that you're worthy of staying on the floor. Otherwise, I'm not going to play you because I don't have to.
From the 510, the Comcast Business Text line, this team last year could have found a way to lose one of those games. This year, they're fun and not so Steph hero ball. So far, that's true. But again, it's been 2 games. They've beaten the Portland Trail Blazers and the Utah Jazz last night by a combined 77 points. Most in NBA history and all the rest. I do think we got to dig deeper, though. And I do need some more time to figure out how good this team actually is. Because again, Dan, they got off to a 5-1 start last year. They were 6-2 to begin the year last year. Now, a lot of those were close wins. They weren't blowouts the way that they beat down 2 road opponents.
But they were better opponents.
They were better opponents. And we'll talk about that as we roll on Warriors this week. 888-957-9570. I see Austin and San Jose. We'll lead off with you on the other side. 888-957-9570. That's Dan DeVoe. My name is Evan Giddings. You're listening to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Valvoline Instant Oil Change is your 15-minute drive-through oil change. Visit the
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Evan Giddings and Dan Devone, this is Warriors This Week, breaking down the Warriors' hot start to the season against the Portland Trail Blazers and the Utah Jazz. Cam was here last night, saw the 30-point blowout amidst an unbelievable World Series game.
Literally the hardest working man at 95.7 The Game.
Dude, did you know that he didn't even know he was going to be in this morning, got a call at the crack ass of dawn and was like, you know what, I'm going to be there for my boys. Shout out to Cam. Shout out to Big Cam. Is also, of course, our network coordinator for all Warriors games here on 95.7 The Game. So shout out to you, Cam. We are taking your calls.
Meanwhile, Jersey Ken just hung up on us, right?
Dude, I haven't seen him for 3 weeks since the Mets bit the dust.
He's done.
Yeah.
He's not getting out of bed.
We are going to keep it at the NBA. People are rolling in here on Warriors This Week, 888-957-9570. Someone, of course, taking a shot at Klay, someone taking a shot at Poole, someone taking a shot at Kaminga. All right, we're trying to sift through this thing, all right? How much stock are you taking from the Warriors' first 2 victories, 140-104 in Portland on Wednesday, and, of course, last night, 127-86 against the Utah Jazz? You want to go to one of our favorites, Dan?
Let's do it.
All right, Austin, in San Jose, start us off here on Warriors This Week. What's going on, my man? How are you feeling about the Warriors' first 2 games? Austin in San Jose.
Your travels, was it Madagascar or Mali, or was it someplace else in the world that you traveled back from? Just curious on that. But, so I'm definitely excited, but I'm pumping the brakes a little bit on what I've seen. I think the opponents, a lot of bad basketball in the NBA. We're already seeing, with Portland and San Antonio, and so we have to be a little bit careful. Dan and guys, I don't really buy the 12-man rotation. Whatever it is, I don't think that's long-term something that is going to work, especially when you start playing the better teams. It's nice to see a bunch of guys playing, but I don't think that's a strategy that's going to work. My 5 would be putting Steph with Buddy. Please don't put Podziemski in the starting lineup. That's a nightmare. I know that everybody thinks his game is great, but I think let's not overrate this guy. He strikes me as a guy that's kind of gimmicky, and I don't know that long term you can put him in the starting lineup. I think Moody would step up before him, but I like Buddy playing with Steph. I like Buddy and Steph more together with Wiggins, Trey Jackson Davis, and of course Draymond. That would be my 5, and then the backup team would be whatever you decide. But yeah, let's pump the brakes a little bit. I got to see the first 15 or so games against competition to see how they do. And the last thing I was going to say is the finishing lineup is going to be important too, because right now they've been blowing people out. But when it gets into tight games, who is going to be the finishing lineup? I don't like this. We're going to the same thing. Kerr's kind of a little bit of concern over 2 years where Kerr doesn't seem to be able to find a lineup. And that's a little bit troubling. I know he's got all these choices and all these weapons, as you like to say, but at some point you got to decide on your 5. And this whole notion that we can run 10, 12 guys out there, that's nice for college and high school, but I don't think that's going to work in the NBA. One more thing. The number 2, Dan, you alluded to that. I think the thing with my guy, Kaminga, this current way they're running is not conducive to Kaminga getting a long-term contract. I can see where I think they're going to trade Kaminga at deadline. It makes too much sense to try to trade Kaminga. But the key is to get everybody playing well so that these guys have value when you do trade them. So if JK can play enough to where another team thinks, hey, he's valued, then we can get something back from him. And we still have to find a number 2 if we want to be anywhere in the top 5, 6 in the NBA, guys. I'll keep listening. Thanks again.
Thanks, Austin. No, look, he's not throwing cold water on the 2-0 start. I think he's a little cautious. We haven't seen anything like this before. And playing 12 guys, you talked about it. You've never seen it in your years of watching an NBA.
I want to say there was a Sacramento team back in the day with Chris Webber, Peja Stojakovic, and those boys. It went like 11 deep. I was looking this up. I also think there was might have been a Portland team in 2000 that was going like 10, 11 deep, and they were really, really good. That was with Sabonis Sr. and all those, and Detlef Schrempf and those guys. So, but it's very, very rare. It's very rare. So you know what it's really difficult to do as a coach? You got to coach your ass off every single night and keep track of all of these guys and making sure that they get run, that they're content and that they're filling a role and a purpose while being on the floor. Just really quick, back to Austin's point. As far as Buddy Hield getting into the starting lineup, I'd like to get your thoughts, but I think he's perfectly suited as a sixth man. Like, that's what the sixth man looks like a Lou Williams, like a Jamal Crawford. Like, those are the guys you covet. I think he's perfect right where he's at. To me, the number 2 comes down to either Moody or Podziemski. If you're going to slide Wiggins down to the 3, if Kaminga continues to play himself out of that starting 5.
I would personally lean Moody or Melton instead of Pods. Also, I mean,
I forgot about Melton because there's so many.
Many of these guys. It's not that I'm down on Pods maybe as much as Austin is, but I also, from what I've seen so far, it does feel like there's not another player that Kerr feels comfortable running the second unit with or through. And Podziemski, though, he's never going to be a 20-point per game scorer in the NBA, I don't think. But he does connect a lot of different lineups.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of the dirty work. And I think he's perfectly suited to play with whoever is coming off the bench. The Hield point, I think, is I completely agree with. I don't want Buddy Hield in the starting lineup, not because I don't think he can play alongside Steph, but because I think Buddy Hield, and this is kind of my macro takeaway from what I've seen through 6 preseason games and 2 early ridiculous shooting performances, that's what the Warriors needed from Klay Thompson.
Yes.
That's what they needed Klay to be last year. They needed to be a guy that was willing to sacrifice and come off the bench, not change how he plays the game, not change how aggressive he was in shooting the basketball, but being willing to take a step back as far as minutes and as far as pride, and he couldn't do it. That's why I think overall, the Buddy Hield for Klay Thompson swap, I'm not sure Buddy Hield's a better player than Klay Thompson, but that was a situation that was perfect for both teams. It was a perfect swap with Klay Thompson going to Dallas. He gets to still start. He gets to play easy basketball alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, and he doesn't have to be in the limelight. So he gets what he wants. Meanwhile, Buddy Hield comes into the Warriors. He can be the sixth-man gunner that is really what he's always been. Even when he started, he's been a gunner. And so when Buddy Hield has those kind of nights like he has the prior 2 against Portland and Utah, you benefit and you can run away with that game. If, and eventually when, he goes on a cold streak and he's not shooting 60% from three-point range anymore, he doesn't kill you when he's playing 20 to 25 minutes or less per night. That was never going to happen with Klay Thompson because Klay was going to continue to shoot and Klay was going to continue to also, I think, be used by Kerr. So to me, the swap by the Warriors, Buddy Hield for Klay Thompson, it's not an indictment on Klay's game, but what it is, it's a perfect match for both sides. And so I don't think Buddy Hield should be in the starting lineup. I think they should continue to use him how he's been used, which is a sixth-man shooter and a guy that can come in and play alongside a lot of different people.
He's the quintessential sixth man. That's what you want, is a guy that's just going to come in and light a fire. It's exactly the perfect role for him right now. And again, there's going to be nights when he's not going to shoot it well. That's just been Buddy Hield. And I would say that's applicable to any guy who lives and dies and makes a name for himself from behind the stripe. And when you think about, Klay Thompson in the comparison, it's just Klay Thompson just got old. And it's not that Klay Thompson can't shoot. He's in a perfect fit. I mean, again, think about Dallas last year.
It was just time.
Dallas last year in the NBA Finals, everybody was glommed on to 2 guys, Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. So they would reverse the ball, and there would be Josh Green. That was the guy's name. Josh Green would be your shooter. And now you replace guys like Josh Green for Klay Thompson, and he's perfectly suited just to get out of bed in Dallas and shoot that 3 because it's going to be there all night. It's a perfect situation. The thing with Klay Thompson and why it got old with the Warriors, it wasn't his shooting, because he still can do that, although I would maintain that Klay had a hard time sustaining his hot shooting through 4 quarters. Usually it was done in the first quarter, or usually he'd get hot in a quarter, but he wasn't very consistent throughout the entire game. But that aside, he can no longer play transitional defense. And when I talked about the Warriors being old a year ago, typically, and more specifically, I was talking about 2 guys, and it was Chris Paul and it was Klay Thompson. After those after those injuries, he just was not the same guy, where he was once the best two-way player in the game, and he became a glaring weakness when you talk about that team trying to get back defensively. And now you just replaced him with a bunch of horses, man, guys who just go. And that, to me, once again, is what jumps off the page when I watch the Warriors right now. And that is that they just look younger, spry, fast, and energetic.
888-957-9570 is the number. This is Warriors This Week all year long. Every Saturday, 9 to noon, we'll have you locked here on the best Warriors coverage in the Bay on 95.7 The Game. Dan Devone, Evan Giddings, Cameron Williams on the board with us. Let's go down to San Jose. Talk to our guy, Robert, wants to get in on the conversation. What's up, Rob? How we doing?
Pretty good. Just unfortunately working today like you guys.
We're all in it together, my man.
Yes. If the Warriors had just barely won these last two games, people would be screaming their heads off, wondering what's going on. They blow these two poor teams out, and people are still wondering what's going on, how much stock you put into it. A good team is supposed to blow poor teams off the court, and that's what the Warriors have done. Let's just relax and enjoy the season. We don't have to figure out what the hell is going to be going on to come next April right now in October. Just relax, enjoy the games, and let's see where things play out. In terms of the 10-man rotation or 12-man rotation, I guess most of your callers are 40 and under or something like that, because I remember Al Attles in 1975, the first championship team, the Warriors ran 10 or 11 out there every night, and it didn't seem like it hurt them. So it's been done before. It's not like this is unprecedented. In terms of Austin and San Jose, I don't know what his issue is, but Brandon Podziemski, he said some of the same things last year. The young man can play ball. He is a baller. Just accept it. I don't know if it's a racial issue, him, or what's going on, but Podziemski can play. Just let him do his thing. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Robert. I think a lot of people with Pods, it's not necessarily that they think he stinks, but I think because of how quickly he was elevated in the Warriors hierarchy, people wonder how good he actually is and how good he can become. Again, it's about projecting a lot of these young guys. It's the same conversation we're having with Kaminga. And whether you like it or not, I don't think we're going to have enough of a sample size, even by the end of this season or the deadline, if they decide to move him, to make a declaration of who Jonathan Kaminga is. But the fact of the matter is you have to. And so people, I think, know a little more about who Pods is, and then makes them feel comfortable with their game. Meanwhile, Kaminga, he could be someone that, I don't know, transforms into a 25-point-per-game scorer, or he could just be an empty calories guy on a bad basketball team. I'm not so sure yet because, well, really, I also don't think that the way that the Warriors have set up the beginning of this season, it's conducive to his skill set. Playing alongside Wiggins, I do think, Dan, they're eventually going to have to make a choice between those two guys. And as much as we talked about it last year, I have not been a big fan of the way that Wiggins played the past two seasons. But I also think if you're choosing between those two guys for this specific team, it's probably Wiggs.
Yeah, first things with Podziemski. I understand sort of the questioning and or a lot of people not on board with how Podziemski, I don't know if it's racially motivated. I don't think that's what's going on here. I think it's more along the lines of, well, why does this guy get an opportunity to start in his rookie year? Meanwhile, two guys who came out of the lottery, that being Moses Moody and Jonathan Kaminga, still are vying for playing time last year. Yet here comes Podziemski, a guy out of Santa Clara, and now suddenly he seems to be like the teacher's pet. I think there's some of that going on here. And I think what you have to realize about Podziemski, I'm with you now that I think about it, he is a guy that sort of is a calming influence coming off the bench. I don't like him as a starter because all of a sudden you seem sort of diminutive and a little bit smaller in the backcourt. Moody seems as though he can guard multiple players in multiple positions. He gives you length. Same thing with Andrew Wiggins. Even DeAnthony Melton is a longer sort of player, even though he has about maybe the same size in terms of height like that of Podziemski. But I don't know, Podziemski and Steph Curry, they just seem like a small backcourt. I like him coming off the bench, and I do think that he has sort of what Chris Paul provided a year ago. and that is a guy that's going to connect and balance the floor.
Well, I also think he made more sense sometimes starting for last year's team because of Klay. I mean, Klay wasn't a guy that I think could, like, he was more of a 3 in my opinion. So you naturally needed someone at the 2. Wiggins wasn't playing that well last year, and Kaminga's, I mean, in my opinion, more of a 4. So I think there was just more of an opening at that spot that allowed him to play and start as much as he did. I actually think for this year's team, he's perfect coming off the bench, because if you are going to play 12 guys, well, then you need someone that can play with 7 dudes beyond the starting 5. And I think Podziemski's able to do that. Is he the perfect player? No, but he has know-how, and I think he just has a feel that is valuable for what this iteration of the Warriors are. So would I like him in the starting lineup? He could probably do it. He could probably play in the starting lineup. But I think his skill set is better suited for playing with a multitude of dudes, which it looks like Kerr's going to try and feature this season.
The thing about Podziemski, he's one of those guys that when you watch a Warrior game of the ball's in his hands, you just feel secure. Even though he's so young, you feel as though he's going to, more often than not, make the right play. Like he's going to find the right guy, and he's going to distribute or take a shot, but usually he's going to do... He's a smart basketball player, and you win at the end of the day with guys like that. Getting back to Wiggins and the Jonathan Kaminga scenario, because I think that this room isn't big enough for the two of them. Somebody's got to leave. And it ain't Andrew Wiggins. But Andrew Wiggins really becomes sort of the X factor going forward. Because the question is not only are we buying the Warriors, like is this sustainable, but I'll just take it a step further. Is this version of Andrew Wiggins sustainable? Like, I like this Andrew Wiggins. This Andrew Wiggins, who, by the way, came into camp, he looks like he put on a good 10 to 15 pounds of pure muscle. But this Andrew Wiggins bought in a tenth of what? You know, with me, you think
25 pounds?
No, he said 15.
No,
10 to 15.
I haven't noticed much about him.
He looks bigger.
He's active. By the way, all right, so, career high 13 rebounds. Still has a problem at the cup.
Well, that's where he got a lot of those rebounds.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. the 13 rebounds are a little, I don't know. Sorry,
well, can we say
for
he at least got 7 on his own, 6 that were legit?
Sure. Well, yeah, we'll give him credit for 6 or 7.
Oh, you are so down on Wiggins.
No, he's playing well, man. I just want to pump the brakes because, and look, I think everybody, we do this a lot in sports, right? Like, I'm right, you're wrong. Look, this guy was this. I think a lot of people have been waiting to take a 2-year victory lap on Andrew Wiggins. And I'm with you. I would like to see more from him before I believe that he's back.
Well, this version of Wiggins, when he's energized, you can win with. But as we have seen, he has a strong tendency to sort of disappear. And not necessarily because of a personal leave where he physically disappears and leaves the team like he's done the last 2 years. But while he's on the floor, he can become sort of an enigma and lethargic and somebody that disappears and play 18 to 20 minutes and you didn't even know he was out there. He has a tendency to do that going back to his days with Minnesota. This version of Andrew Wiggins, you can win with. And he really becomes a key for the Golden State Warriors because he's one of those guys that you mentioned. If Buddy Hield doesn't have it going and Steph Curry's off the floor, well, you're looking to Andrew Wiggins to give you those consistent big numbers. And hopefully he's going to give you the 18 to 20 points a night. And if Jonathan Kaminga is not going to be Jonathan Kaminga and he stays in this funk, then the emergence and this renewed version of Andrew Wiggins, as we've all seen, we've been teased before. We're just, Andrew, can you do this throughout the course of the entire season becomes the question.
Well, that's why I feel like once the Warriors start to play better teams, they're eventually going to have to make a choice about the 2 wings in their starting lineup. Because if we are to identify a weakness, and there haven't been many, it's been the first 6 minutes of basketball games. They were down to Portland, they were down to Utah for the better part of the first 5 minutes. And, look, you're going to come out and miss shots and all the rest. But I just find it interesting that the Kaminga-Wiggins pairing, I don't know, when you watch them play together, I think they have similar mindsets. They obviously both want the ball, and the ball kind of sticks when it's in their hands. Now, I like that the 5 on the floor to start games, and maybe to close games once they get into closer contests with other better teams. I do like how they have a defensive mindset. Those five, I think that's their best defensive five that they can feature. And it's because even if someone gets by Wiggins or gets by Kaminga, when you have Draymond and TJD on the back line, it makes things so much easier. Also, same for Curry, if he's not as great of a defender as he once was. And I don't think he's a great defender in general, but it allows those three players on the perimeter to play a bit more freely. And last year, when either Draymond was at the 5 or even early in the season when Looney was there, I think Looney looks like, talk about a guy that's in better shape. Looney, I mean, he's gone the opposite direction as apparently Wiggins. Who's
intermittent fasting.
Is that what it is?
That's what he did.
Oh, he stopped eating for 12 hours a day?
I think he's like 16 to 18, but whatever.
Boy. Well, Looney looks like he's in a lot better shape. But last year when he was a bit slower, it just, I don't know, they would just get diced up on the inside. And so now I think it allows those three perimeter players in the starting lineup to get to the three-point line, to close out better, and not have to worry about who's behind them getting cooked.
So before we get to the break, I just want you mentioned the 1975 Golden State Warriors. One of the callers brought up the Warriors from 75 and making some sort of comparisons. That Al Attle's team also went similarly this deep. I'm just going to read off the roster. For those of you that want to get nostalgic and remember these guys, this was a young Rick Barry.
Well, I wasn't alive, but I'm aware of what they did.
Butch Beard, Steve Bracey. There was Derek Dickey, Charles Dudley, Charles Johnson, George Johnson, Jeff Mullen, Clifford Ray, Phil Smith, Jamal Wilkes, and apparently all of them got a lot of run, got a lot of playing time.
They don't make sports names like they used to. The olden sports names are the best, and we need someone to, I don't know, just start naming their children like they're from the boomer generation. Butch Beard, keep going.
Charles Dudley, Steve Bracey.
Steve Bracey. Bracey's a great name.
George Johnson, Jeff Mullins, Clifford Ray.
George Johnson. Yeah, you don't run
Phil Smith. So Phil Smith went to USF, and I remember when I was a child, Phil Smith was playing, and his dad used to drive the number 22. For those of you from San Francisco know the 22 is the Fillmore bus, and his old man used to drive me to school. I used to get on the 22 and take it to school out in Pacific Heights, and there would be Phil Smith, senior, driving the bus, and I was a little kid, and I'd say, boy, your son played well. He's like, yeah, he had his jump shot going last night. I had this little conversation with him. I used to get so excited to see Phil Smith Sr. conducting the number 22 Fillmore as little Danny DeVone went to school and learned nothing.
Well, you're able to learn something. I mean, I seem to learn something from you every single time we work together.
Me and big Mr. Chickering went to Stewart Hall, and you talk about parents throwing, $25,000 a year down the drain. My God.
Real quick before we hit the break, I'm just looking at that season. Earl the Pearl Monroe, Nate Tiny Archibald, Elvin Hayes, Fred Carter. Dude, who's this guy from Detroit I'm looking at right now? Dave Bing. I mean, you don't see like God love DeAnthony Melton. God love Brandon Podziemski. Not enough zest. Not enough original zest behind those names. I don't know. Maybe I'm just an old school cat. But again, the question we're trying to figure out right now, number one, is this 12-man rotation sustainable for the Golden State Warriors? Are you taking stock from the first two games? Are you taking stock from the 8 games that we've seen so far? 6 in the preseason, 2 in the regular season. They haven't lost one. And these first 2 games in the regular season, though they've played Portland and Utah, they've absolutely blown out their opponent. 888-957-9570 is the number. That's Dan DeBoe. My name is Evan Giddings. We roll on Warriors this week after this on 95.7 The Game.
Life insurance. Why are you putting it on? YouTube, powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Tim Roy on the call, as he is for every single Warriors game on 95.7 The Game. Warriors blow out the Jazz last night, 127-86, and a big reason is, of course, is apparently Buddy Hield, Dan, can't miss a shot. I mean, the ball was in his hand, going up. In fact, there was one play, I think, in the second quarter. Kaminga was dribbling down. It wasn't necessarily just a straight transition breakaway, but Buddy's in the corner, and he's just, ball, give me ball. And Kaminga didn't see him.
He was open, too.
He was
remember
open.
That exact play. No, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What, did Kaminga not see him? Or was one of those, like, Kaminga's like, no, bro, this is I need to get it. I need to eat. I need to eat. Because the ball reversed him with I think Curry finally found him, right?
It was either Curry or Wiggins, but Kaminga reverse track, kicked it out. I think, it was either Curry or Wiggins, but Buddy was just sitting there all alone for like 5 seconds, just ball, ball. And finally they hit him. It goes up immediately and it goes in. I don't know. It is refreshing seeing the Warriors playing as fast as they have. I think you touched on that in the first hour. It's like this team is, I don't know, they just feel like they are playing with a lot more energy. And it could be because of a longer off season, not playing as much basketball, most of them at least. Guys focusing on their individual games. And I think I don't know, the lack of baggage that surrounded the group from the last 2 seasons, whether it was because of the punch before the year, the contracts. Last season, it was a lack of a contract for Klay Thompson, but also I think the residue of what happened with Poole, getting him out of there, with Draymond Green revert back, the suspensions that followed midseason. There's just a lot of residue in the last 2 seasons for the Warriors, and it feels like this team has a clean slate, which excites me.
Well, just think about this time a year ago. The Golden State Warriors starting lineup was Steph and Klay, Draymond, Looney, and Wiggins. I would argue 4 of those 5 guys are low energy and slower. Now, Steph Curry and Draymond are able to pick their spots, but Klay Thompson is no longer a two-way basketball player and clearly was a glaring weakness when it came to transitional defense. He just doesn't have it anymore. And then the first guy off the bench was Chris Paul. You got even older. Now, while Chris Paul could do a lot of good things offensively and balance the floor and give you that quote-unquote calming influence as Steph comes off, but defensively, he's not an upgrade in terms of transitional defense. And Podziemski and Trayce Jackson-Davis were 2 guys that were sitting on the bench that nobody even gave a thought about getting any sort of substantial run. Now think about it as we fast forward a year later. It's all about Podziemski, it's Moody, it's Trayce Jackson-Davis, it's DeAnthony Melton. Suddenly now, the personnel of this basketball team is all about guys in their early to mid-20s that are getting the majority of the run. And then the Buddy Hields and the Kyle Andersons and GP2s are at 30, 31 years of age. They have changed the identity of this basketball team, where it is now energetic, it's younger, and again, getting back to transitional defense and just running the full 94 feet. These guys have the younger legs to do that.
Yeah, and this is from the 650 on the Comcast Business Text line. If you want to weigh in, 888-957-9570 is the number. Evan Giddings, Dan Devone. We're taking your calls all 3 hours here on Warriors This Week, every single Saturday throughout the Warriors season. 650, this will be a season of adjustments, mostly for Kerr. That I do agree with. But in the meantime, if you're able to, and again, this is why I felt, optimistic coming out of the preseason. I don't think the Warriors have yet figured out who they are, but if you can win games in that process, well, then you might actually have the chance to be a good basketball team because, again, you build buy-in from your players that are playing a lot, players that aren't playing a lot. Right now, Podziemski's played the second most minutes so far of this season for the Warriors. That could change. Buddy Hield has only played 35 minutes. That's 7th most in this team. That could change. Moses Moody is played. I mean, everyone's really in that 40 to 30 range. There's like 7 guys in that area, and a lot of it has been because of blowouts. But I find it interesting that in the first 2 games,
40 to 30 is more like 20 to 10. Has anybody played 40 minutes or 30?
Well, I'm saying like total through the first 2 games.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, sorry.
Gotcha.
Total for the first. Curry's the guy who's played the most minutes, and he's been about 25 and a half.
Yeah.
through the first 2 games. So also that's a great sign. If you can keep the shaft fresh, that's exactly where you want to live. And he hasn't had to play a fourth quarter the first 2 games.
Well, I think that's interesting because one of the callers mentioned this, and maybe it's going to happen on Sunday when they take on the Clippers, and you get into a close game, and it's the fourth quarter, and it's late in the game. Who is your closing 5? Like, you cannot just have this chaos of guys coming on and off the floor. You have to have a little bit more stability. So I think, to your point, as we go along and we find out more about this team and quote-unquote its identity, one of the first tests will be who you closing with when it's a nip and tuck affair with a team potentially like that of the Clippers tomorrow.
Well, and all right, let's just hypothetically say that it's a 5-point game, 5 minutes left, fourth quarter. Who do you think Kerr would feature as his closing 5?
Well, again, it really depends. If Buddy Hield's got it going, then Buddy Hield's on the floor. I mean, that's the beauty of this. It's who's played well up to that point, and it has to do with matchups. So it's difficult to say from afar without watching the personality of the game to determine who's going to be on the floor. I think a lot of that is determined through the course of the game because he's got 13 bodies from which to choose. And so I think all of that sort of dictated by what it is that the player has been able to do throughout the course of that contest. So for me, I think I could throw you out some names, but I don't know that would make any difference when you talk about what actually is going to transpire on the floor if you're down by 5 or up by 5 in the closing minutes.
Well, I think that's why I asked you the question, is because I do think it's up in the air. I don't think it's set. I don't think that the Warriors, who also last year had like 28 different starting lineups, I don't think this starting lineup is going to finish the year, because I think that there's some holes. I think that also this is a team that, to your point, is going to ride the hot hand more than ever. And Kerr is still going to experiment. And it's one of the reasons why I love what he's done so far, is because over the course of, let's say, the first 10 to 15 games, you can gather enough data from all the different combinations that you're experimenting with and figure out which ones you actually want to lean into. Yeah. I think they're still in experimentation mode. I think they're still in development mode for a lot of these young players. And while you also are able to build rest in for Curry, who, by the way, didn't sit a fourth quarter until game 13 of last season, he hasn't played a single fourth quarter 2 games through this year. If you can keep him fresh, if you can keep Draymond fresh, well, then the question about who starts and who closes, that's going to reveal itself. And I know it might sound like tryouts or like, high school basketball players fighting for playing time. I think this team has the proper makeup mentally to be able to handle that, because that Curry's going to play, Draymond's going to play, and everyone else, I don't see a ton of egos or agendas on this team. The guy that probably has the biggest agenda would be Kaminga, because he's playing for a contract. And so far, I don't think he's played very well through 2 games, but that could certainly change. And last year, it took him a while to get going because he was out of the rotation, then was empowered, and then ended up being a 17-point per game score. So, I don't want to write off Kaminga's season, but it appears like, I don't know, through the first 2 games, it looks like he's playing for something more than the other guys, something individual as opposed to the whole.
And his body language, I think, is a little different from everybody else. And understandably, he's a young guy and he's not playing well. I think when you talk about how this starting lineup is going to be potentially drastically different at the end of the season, even at the midway point, maybe in a month from now, get back to me. I think specifically you're talking about 2 guys, aren't we? We're talking about Wiggins and Jonathan Kaminga, because I think that's the choice that they're going to have to eventually make. Yeah, because I don't think Steph's not going anywhere. No. And I think Draymond is anchored. And I want to believe, but I do think that Trayce Jackson-Davis has established himself as your 5. Like I think that even though he's a young player, I don't see that as much as an experiment as, say, like Jonathan Kaminga playing at the 3. I think Trayce Jackson-Davis has pretty much solidified himself at the 5.
Well, and I think I know you love him. I think it's less about TJD than it is about Draymond, and that Kerr doesn't want to feature him at the center position more than he has to. And Trayce Jackson-Davis is, right now, I think, probably a better option than Kevon Looney, though he's looked youthful and recharged and energized. Trayce Jackson-Davis plays well alongside Draymond, and more importantly, Draymond plays well alongside a traditional center. So I think that's what's going to keep TJD in the starting lineup. He's played the fourth most minutes through 2 games of any Golden State Warrior. And I think it's because he's going to play a lot of those Draymond minutes. And I think that the Warriors are better defensively with him in, but Draymond is able to take over games more than he is and was able to last year when they were trying to figure out that what it was, Curry, Klay, Wiggins, Kaminga, Draymond. That lineup last year I thought was to try and figure out how best they could utilize their wings. This year, I think defensively, that's a big difference for them, and they're trying to figure out how their bigs can be effective.
And Looney has been one of those guys that looks like a reclamation project. You talk about the lost weight and getting rebounds like it was the Celtics series.
He's only 28.
3 years ago. I know. It's amazing, isn't it? And the only 2 guys really, again, who are in that sweet spot, when you think about age, usually when you're peaking, are 2 guys that are sort of, at least by appearance, seem as though they've been around forever, and Wiggins and Looney. Wiggins is 29, and Looney's 28. But again, the majority of your team now that you're relying on are in their early to mid-20s, and that's always good. This world's about young people, man. It's about, in just about every facet, and especially when it comes to sports and basketball teams, you want to be young. And I think that the combination with Steph and sort of the gray beards like that of a Draymond Green, it's working right now. But it's to say it's early might be the understatement of the century. But I do think that you
don't want to send them to the top 4 seeds after 2 games?
It's fun, and I think they're going to make more of a name for themselves as this goes along early on in the season. But we're going to learn a lot more about them when it gets into a close contest and it's late in the game. What are we doing? And also, again, the big question for me still remains, as it was going into this season, is when Steph's not available, is this version of Buddy Hield sustainable throughout the entire season? Is this high energy of Andrew Wiggins, this persona, is this the Andrew Wiggins we're going to see throughout the entire season?
Well, and I think also, how do they play against stiffer competition? Right now, you got 3 games. I don't think the Clippers are going to be very good this year, but they're obviously better than Utah and Portland. You play them Sunday, and then you get a back-to-back, your first back-to-back of the year against a Pelicans team. That looks pretty decent. Is coming off a solid season, though Zion is.
Hey, speaking of the Clippers, what do you think of this? Have you heard about this Intuit Dome?
So I was watching their opener.
The wall?
Dude, what are we doing? I don't know. It's a fun thing, but I don't know. I guess
explain to the people at home what the wall is.
So the wall is this massive 360 video board that is built to portray statistics and pump up the crowd and show commercials and all the rest, but also when the guys at the free throw line basically blind them. And I think it was Booker that said it worked or something along those lines, and players are going to have to get used to it. But it is the most Steve Ballmer thing that I've ever seen. This guy is a big personality, is literally a large human, and I think he just wanted to put his stamp on basketball entertainment.
But the wall is also a section behind the rim where it was almost like it has a collegiate feel to it. It's like going to a Duke game. You can't access it unless you're wearing Clipper paraphernalia. You have to stand, and you're cheering for the Clippers throughout the entire. You're doing Clipper chants. I mean, it's like being at a Cal game.
It feels like they want to build kind of like a, I don't know, like a soccer or European football type audience.
That's where they got the idea from. So, and apparently the Intuit Dome is pretty amazing.
Oh, I believe it. By the way, yesterday in Los Angeles, the worst day for traffic probably since the OJ Bronco chase, because you had Game 1 of the World Series, USC football kicked off right after the
Rutgers.
Dodger game. They had a high school either playoff or state championship game at SoFi. The Clippers Intuit Dome was hosting a concert. And I think that there was even one more event going on. But it was there was 5 different massive events all along the left side of Interstate 5. And my buddy was telling me, he's like, yeah, everyone just said, don't go outside.
Well, if I had to, I know we don't want to talk World Series here, but that certainly delivered of all of those events that took place last night. And by the way,
what do you mean? was locked into Utah.
Come on. When we talk about the Los Angeles Lakers, are we not going to, and I want to get back to the Warriors, but this Bronny thing, it did not deliver. I mean,
did you expect it to?
Well, I think there was a sentiment that it was like the Griffies.
There was a leaked source that said when he was going to play. When have you ever heard of a player, whether it's Steph Curry, LeBron James, or all the way down to Lindy? Like, imagine that the Warriors came out with a report, a national report, that Lindy Waters III was going to get time at the tail end of the second quarter for his, I don't know, debut. Like, you'd be like, what?
It didn't work.
It's a joke.
I thought
it was kind of cool, though.
Yeah, if it was a little bit more organic, it'd be cool. He doesn't belong in the NBA. Ken Griffey Jr.
Nothing about this is organic.
Well, Ken Griffey Jr. and his old man were both pretty good. I mean, his old man, Ken Griffey Sr., was on that team, and yeah, he was he wasn't anything he was back into the heyday of his career, but he was still a decent player you could prop up there as a player coach, essentially. And Ken Griffey Jr. was certainly Ken Griffey Jr., and it made sense. But this is just...
He's going to the G League.
He can't even hang in the G League. If I'm in the G League, I'm like, bro, keep going down,
They won the game, Devone. Get off the kit. He didn't ask to be here. His old man put him there.
If I'm in the G League and I'm catching these buses to Iowa City, to Medford, Oregon, in the
Sioux
middle of the
Falls
night,
has action, by the way.
I would say, man, are you kidding me? Like this, what's going on here? What's that dude doing up there? What's that guy doing up in the show?
Well, he belongs in a Greyhound more than he belongs in a chartered NBA flight. So when he goes to the G League, earn your keep. All right, cut your chops a little bit and find out what the Iowa Rattlers got going. I don't even know that's a team, but find out what's going on in some other destination. He's going to be in. I don't even know where the Lakers G League team is. Probably like Lake Elsinore or Temecula, some armpit city between San Diego and Los Angeles.
Somewhere where you've called minor league baseball for sure.
That's Rancho Cucamonga, which is actually not a bad place.
No,
they
it's
got a fantastic
not. You know
top
what's from
golf.
Rancho Cucamonga area? 2 people. Kevin Costner.
Only 2 people?
In terms of stars, celebrities.
Okay.
And Cher. Cher is from that area.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that movie with Nicolas Cage.
And Kevin Costner. You do know who Cher is, right?
Yeah, she's the singer/actress.
Yeah.
Moonlight, or Moon. Something about a moon.
Snap out of it.
You have so much knowledge to...
She slaps Nicolas Cage across the face.
Impart.
Snap out of it.
Yeah, he had a wooden hand, I think.
Very well done. Very well done.
See, this, and you were saying you don't know things or you're not a smart guy. I mean, Dan Devone actually has some of the best recall of anybody in 95.7 The Game, but it only comes out when we... when we're talking about things that have nothing to do with sports.
I'm just down on Bron. I think he's a good kid. It's just LeBron. Come on, man. Like,
they won the game. Now, where it does become a problem is if it costs them a game. But I don't think he's going to play enough to cost them.
Did you hear what Ant-Man said? Anthony Edwards should be mic'd up every game. He was mic'd up. They did beat Minnesota, which is a good team.
Are we sure about that?
Yeah, I think they'll be all right. Are you down in Minnesota already?
I'm down on Julius Randle.
Well, Randle, come on, man. That's why the Knicks got rid of him, man. The ball. Talk about the ball sticking. Like, my man, how many times are we going to pound the rock before we get up your little, 8-foot turnaround Jimmy?
Well, he did have, I think, 33 against the Kings, but that's one of those games where Sacramento just is so disinterested in playing defense, and especially now so with bringing DeMar DeRozan in, that it's like you're just playing a track meet trying to get points up. So, yeah, the Timberwolves,
So Ant-Man said, yeah, Bronny, you don't need to take a shower.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Who else he was dogging?
Well, he dogs everybody.
He was pretty funny.
I mean, Anthony Edwards is probably the player that I feel like you want to watch as much as listen to more than anybody else in basketball.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Warriors have any mic'd up stars. I know people think that Draymond is someone that you want to hear on the court just because he just talks. He's just very loud.
GP2, I'd put a mic on and think he'd be somewhat entertaining. He's got a lot of his dad. He's got a lot of his dad. He's chirping the whole game, man.
He's pretty funny, though. He's got some good one-liners. This is from the Comcast Business text line, 325. Curry and Hield splash buddies. best backcourt duo in the league. Are people already ready to put Hield into the starting lineup?
I heard Vontae had a great stick last night. I don't know if this has been done before, but they went back to the NBC studios, and he stuck Buddy Hield, and he called him Buddy Buckets.
Well, that's been his nickname for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that one was a Bonte original.
It's the first time I heard.
God love King of the Hill. Dude, I'm not so sure that people are super familiar with Buddy Hield. He's been stuck in Sacramento for a long time. And then again, he got moved around last year. But the one thing that Buddy Hield is, and it is similar to Klay Thompson, at least pre-injury, he never misses a game. Yeah. He's always available, and he's always healthy. And apparently he's always got the green light.
And he's also a good guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people associated him because maybe just the way that he plays with being like a Nick Young is kind of a clown in my opinion. But everything that I've heard from Buddy Hield, and we were there on media day and we got to talk to him a little bit like behind the scenes, he's pretty cool.
No, he's a good. In fact, I think that it's done with purpose, that you find, obviously you want to get the best talent, but they also have to they have to be able to immerse in the culture that is the Warriors, which I think is essentially, starting with Steph, is that you can't be problematic, which is why Kaminga continues to be, they got to make sure he doesn't climb into his little world and go a little Jordan Poole and just, give me the rock. I'm a young guy and I want the ball. Let me show you what I can do. And if I don't get it, I'm going to sit at the end of the bench and pout. Like there's that potential with him. They got to make sure they reel him in, keep him tethered to the rest of the team, and keep him involved because he can go on Planet JK.
That's going to be an original, Planet JK. But as far as the question, we're trying to figure out what it takes to implement, to sustain a 12-man rotation. Let's just take a listen to Buddy Hield. Here's what he had to say.
First of all, you gotta start off liking each other. I think everybody has the right personalities. Everybody comes in and there's no egos. And plus, me coming here, there's a standard that these guys go by, and it's championship. They've done the work. So no matter what you say is wrong, because whatever they say is right, and you just go by that. And you learn and you listen and you try to observe everything, and you just try to figure out how to apply myself into their like uniqueness and how I can be effective.
The first part of that, I think, as we move forward to our next segment, Dan, is the most important part. You got to like each other. It does feel like the Warriors this year, there's something a little bit different about the vibe, the feeling. And I think a lot of fans that I've talked to can already kind of, it's palpable. So I want to get into that on the other side. Do you feel like the vibes are different about this year's team? And why is it? Is it because of the offseason? Is it because of the way that they're playing? Is it because Kerr hasn't necessarily set a standard for who is going to play and who's not on a given night? Is it because of the 12-man rotation? Is it because of the buy-in that someone like Buddy Hield is talking about?
I got a Buddy Hield stat.
Okay.
We got to go to a break?
Other side?
No. Get my stat out now.
All right.
Do you know, this has been regurgitated a million times,
we do
the guy that's hit the most threes over the last 5 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we can go to a break.
And I'll tell you why. That stat just continues to circulate for some odd reason on the other side. 888-957-9570. Warriors this week, 95.7 The Game.
This is the story of the one.
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Yeah, Steph Curry may never play in a fourth quarter again. The call was by Tim Roye after the Warriors beat the Utah Jazz 127-86 last night. Warriors This Week, Dan DeVoe and Evan Giddings every Saturday along Warriors season. I'm just looking at...
Wait, are you buying Wiggins yet? Because I know you're...
Am I buying Wiggins?
Understandably, you like a lot of people, were out on Wiggins last year. You probably more than most.
Yeah.
Are you buying him?
Well, so the Warriors tried to trade him. I don't want people to have a revision history about that. But I like what I've seen so far. Forgive me if I'm withholding
skeptical
my judgment, about Wiggins. He's looked good. What was I going to say? You ruined my train of thought now. No, this is kind of what we do. I was just going through our text thread, Dan, because, we talked about a variety of topics. I'm looking at Kahuna Damas, which I think was about something baseball related. But the last text, because you and I haven't been on air together the last couple of weeks, bro, we got beef, ? Why do we have beef?
Oh, on the No,
because you and I.
Well, because I hadn't heard from you.
Oh.
And I was informed that we weren't doing the show together multiple weeks. So I felt as though Lucas essentially came to my house and handed me like divorce papers. I'm like, okay, I had no idea we had beef. Is there something up with my man Sterling that I'm not aware of? So I thought I would confront you directly. Bro, do we got beef?
No, we don't. But it was funny. I just got the text out of the blue. So I was in Vegas last week looking for cricket. That's an inside joke if you've been listening to the Saturday shows. Looking for cricket, didn't find her. Found another fantastic woman though. And then the week before, I think I had a broadcast or something else going on. So no, it's not a beef. We
have not done a show since you were getting liquored at 4 a.m. at the University of California. No, you weren't. But you were at Cal, which, by the way, we have not talked, which had to be, which
oh my God,
one of the most epic days in the history of that school and that program, and it turned out to be one of the worst.
Yeah, so backtracking 3 weeks, before we get back to the Golden State Warriors, I promise we will. We got a lot to get into from 2 games. So the Cal game was an unbelievable atmosphere. I was just riding all day from 4 a.m. to like midnight when the game ended.
So I saw the game day. Obviously, you were there. So later that day, I saw it replayed.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the best game days, if not the best game days. When Daniel hits the field goal. The kick, and McAfee and Herb Street going nuts. Like, that was one of the best games. Like, Cal delivered. And then I'm watching this game, and at halftime, they're rolling Miami. I'm like, this is the greatest day in the history of the program.
Well, it was.
And then all of a sudden,
the fourth quarter.
Yeah, 5 minutes in the fourth quarter hits.
No, it was funny. So, and actually, the men's basketball coach, Mark Madsen, former Los Angeles Laker, he was sitting
Stanford
like
Cardinal.
2 rows behind us. Oh. So we were chopping it up with him all game, and we were having a good time.
Great guy, right?
He's awesome.
Yeah,
big fan, and just supports whatever program that he's associated with. So
smart guy too.
And,
really
and
smart.
I don't know what they're going to be in the ACC this year, but we're talking to him, chopping it up, and I think it was in the third quarter, right after the pick 6, and they go up 25 points, and it's like, holy bleep, they're about to win this football game. Yeah. They're about to take down, I think they were at the time number 8. They've since moved higher. University of Miami. It's going to be great. So everyone starts creeping down. Everyone starts creeping down towards the bottom of the field. And then Miami scores 1 touchdown.
To rush the field, you mean?
Yeah. We're taking the goalpost down.
Oh.
At least in my mind. And then Miami gets a stop. And then Cam Ward throws a touchdown. And then Miami gets a stop. And then Cam Ward runs for a touchdown. It's like, oh my God. And so part of me wanted to see if they could legitimately come back. They were down 3 or 4 scores with like 11 minutes left in the game.
So sad.
It was one of the greatest comebacks I've ever seen. It just so happened to come against the team that I was rooting for.
Yeah, and you know what? You really want to point a finger at what, and Cal did do a lot of wrong things, but actually Cam Ward in Miami, you got to tip your hat, man. They balled.
No, I don't. They're
can't stand
frauds.
It. Well, I told you that going in, that Cam Ward was overrated, but...
Yeah, actually, that's the one guy I came away thinking he's not overrated.
Well, yeah,
the rest of the team.
Were you really going to tear down a goalpost?
No, I was going to try. I don't know if it.
That's so 1980s. That's like, I don't know. I haven't seen anybody bring down a goalpost. It's been a while.
Dude, they did it literally earlier in the day.
Yeah, what did
or
they do
the week
that?
before.
Yeah,
Vanderbilt.
That's right.
When they
Vandy
beat
took it
Alabama
down.
for the first time since the Civil War.
But I mean, would you be one of those guys that's going to climb to the top of that post? Or are you just like sort of like pulling on it from the base? Because somebody's got to be at the usually you have somebody at the top and there's a host of people like down at the lower base and everybody's got to put pressure on it, like weight to sort of bring that thing down.
So I think it depended on what state of mind I was in. If I was 4 a.m. on if I was 4 a.m. on California Street, Evan, I might have been at the top trying to scale this bad boy with all my might. But it had been a long day. You know, I had to work with you. That was probably the highlight outside of game day and literally everything else that happened. And then at that point, I probably would have been at the bottom, just giving it a slight push.
You got to be careful when you get up to. This has nothing to do with anything, but I just talked to this buddy of mine who's gone through 3 months. He's looking to be a fireman right here in San Francisco and join the fire department. And what they have to do is really strenuous and challenging physically, like lifting up these 250-pound doors, carrying people upstairs.
These guys are linebackers.
They got to lift. I mean, it is difficult for 3 months. It's the final 4 days, right? He's basically passed. And so in the last closing days, they have a character building day where they build this human pyramid.
Oh my!
And he falls off the back, and someone's supposed to catch him, snapped his ankle, and he's done.
I shouldn't be laughing at that.
No, and I felt sorry. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Because I saw him walking around in a boot, and like, oh, they got you, huh? He's like, well, you won't believe
I was saving a cat.
How I failed this thing. It had nothing to do of any of the challenges in terms of physically trying to be a fireman, but rather it was a character building. I was at the top of the pyramid, fell backwards, no one caught me, and I broke my ankle, and I'm done.
Yeah, not character building, character destruction or foundational building. You got to build a stronger ankle there, buddy. Get some titanium plates in there or what? Oh, well, I don't know if the Warriors...
Yeah, thank you. The Warriors, who are they? Yeah, thank you.
What kind of character building can we have? Do you think we could get Steph Curry, Brandon Podziemski? Actually, all right, this I think is, well, I just came up with a decent question.
I do want to talk about Kaminga, but go ahead.
We definitely can. We got about an hour and 20 left, up until 12. Every day, every Saturday, I should say. Warriors this week, 95-7 the game. But if you were to build a pyramid from bottom to top, who would be on the Warriors pyramid? Because I think they actually have enough people. So if they're building, let's see, 5, 4, 3, 2, that's 15, right? I think 5, 4, 3, 2. Yeah, 15 people, 15-man roster. Where are you starting your Warriors? Who's the foundation? Who is not going to be breaking their ankles?
No, I wish I never told this story.
What do you? Well,
we really got to do this exercise.
Cam, do you want to help? No.
Okay, I'd say so. The foundational pieces are Steph and Draymond, Looney, and then I put GP2, and then I'm going to put in. So is that my base? Is that 5 guys? No, that's 4. And then I put in as my 5th. Yeah, I'm going to go the old soul, Trace Jackson Davis. I think he's established himself as being a base guy. Like, I hear what you're saying, that he sort of goes hand in hand with Draymond. But I think even if Draymond's out, he just understands pick and roll. I think he understands just the good hands around the basket, his screen setting, which he's learned from Looney. I think he's a base guy. I'll let you do the next tier.
No. I would agree. The only guy, I guess, actually, I think I'd probably put Moses Moody in as my 5th instead of Trace Jackson Davis. To me, he would be in the second level, the 4. Okay. And just because he's a little bit younger. But I think Moody, to me, represents a little more of what I believe to be Golden State Warriors basketball. But I'm with you. You know, Curry, Draymond, GP2, I think is an understated but obvious choice, along with Looney and then Moody. The second level, I would have Trace Jackson Davis in. I would have Brandon Podziemski in. And then from there, for my last 2 spots, I think I would put Buddy Hield at this point. I think what he's shown so far, as in regards to buy-in, I've been blown away. Now, I don't think he's going to keep shooting 60% from 3, but just the way that he's approached this season and probably taking a step back. I think he was humbled a bit last year by what happened in Philly. But from everything I heard, all the Sixers fans loved him. Like he wasn't a guy that pouted. He wasn't a dude that threw guys under the bus. He was really good. So he had been my 3rd. And
wait, I got a great nickname for him.
Buddy Buckets?
Yeah, Buddy Buckets.
I feel like
Huh? What? Huh?
I feel like that's been his nickname since birth. Just the moment he could throw up a shot on that little 8-foot tee chucker.
Okay, who else you got?
This one's tough because I don't know. He's been here for a long time, but I can't yet. Wiggins has not proved to me yet that he is still that same guy from a few years ago. This might be disrespectful, but I like Kyle Anderson.
Oh.
Slow-mo? Dude, he's always been on a winning basketball team. Everywhere he's been.
No, that's true.
From UCLA to San Antonio to Minnesota, he's always played for winning teams.
Yeah, I guess Minnesota was a winner last year. Kyle Anderson.
Oh, and Memphis, sorry.
Kyle Anderson is a good player. And there was a play last night where he was suffocating with GP2, and I think it was Colin Sexton had the basketball. And they are such pests. You forget about GP2 and his importance because he's been so oft injured. But him being upright and playing, again, we talk about sustainability. If he's somebody that can stay away from the annual injury, GP2 really continues to set the standard defensively for this team, I think. And he is so important. And when you think about him and DeAnthony Melton and Kyle Anderson, the three of them were mugging Colin Sexton. I'm like, wow, that is just, I do not want to be Colin Sexton or anybody on the Utah Jazz having to deal with these guys.
No, I mean, you can pretty much, like, they also feel a little more interchangeable. And I think that's a big reason why Kerr can play 12. It's not just that the talent level is similar, but I think there's more players on this year's group that just fit together. And again, it is because of the offseason additions. With all due respect to Chris Paul, I don't think he ever wanted to come off the bench. Like, he's in San Antonio. He's in a place now where he can start, and he can still be the player that at least he wants to be. Last year, he was a consummate professional. I think he helped mentor some of the younger players. I think Chris Paul's a good guy, but I don't think he was happy in the role that he had. Now you look at Melton, Slow-Mo, Kyle Anderson, and Buddy Hield. Those are three players that have started, that have come off of the bench, and that have been somewhere in between. So all three of them have had different roles in their NBA careers, but they're also still not old enough that they're over the hill and they can contribute. So that's why I like the swap, along with Klay, who we talked about earlier, of swapping Klay Thompson and Chris Paul for those three dudes.
And every single one of those guys are good with limited minutes because that's essentially what they've done throughout their career. They're all role players. You go through that entire roster that played last night, and everybody, with the exception of Jonathan Kaminga, I think is the one guy that can be problematic because everybody else can buy in because that's essentially who they are. They realize that they got to deliver when they're on the floor. And even when they're on the floor, it's a limited role. And they're good with yo-yoing back and forth out of the rotation. I'm not sure that Jonathan Kaminga is there yet.
I would agree with you. Before we dig in deeper onto Jonathan Kaminga, I do want to get out to San Ramon and bring on Pete. Pete, what's going on? You're on with Dan and Evan on Warriors This Week. How are you?
Evan, Dan, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I am what the kids call hella swell. I hope you guys are all good today.
Love that.
I just want to comment on your first five, that foundation, that base, and base is like a floor. And I'm so glad you all, I think you agreed on Moody and Peyton in that five because they do some of their best work on the floor, horizontal. Going after the ball, scrapping. I love those two guys. And that's pretty much what I got.
Yeah, right on. I do think it's interesting that, well, number one, I think it's the reason why he got paid, Moses Moody. They were able to find a number that was good for both sides. But as much as I believe that Jonathan Kaminga can become a good player, Moses Moody has always fit more with what I believe the Golden State Warriors are under Steve Kerr and Steph Curry, which I think is the reason why a lot of fans have issues that he doesn't play more. Is like he always seems to play well. He never seems to hurt you. Now, he's never had a massive game-winning performance. He can't take over quite yet, but he's solid. And you don't have to deal with the roller coaster ride that you do often with Kaminga. Sometimes he can take over a game, but he can also go 1 for 5 with 2 points last night. And by the way, his only bucket was an alley-oop dunk.
The issues with Kaminga, especially when you put him alongside Moses Moody. See, I think we're both in agreement. We don't know where this is going to go, and we continue to talk about sustainability. We'll see. It's fun. But the one thing you'd have to admit, and this is applicable for football and just about anything else, that when we talk about, what do we say about defenses with football? It travels, right? Like, you don't know how your offense is going to respond. Are you going to be good in terms of throwing the ball? But as long as your defense is solid, you'll always have a puncher's chance. Well, the same could be said about the Golden State Warriors this year, is that we have no idea whether they're going to be able to play and thread this thing every night if you're Steve Kerr and get 12 or 13 guys. But if your defense is energetic and you got young guys that are doing this and that are proven with DeAnthony Melton and Moody and Slow-Mo, well, you're going to give yourself an opportunity regardless of what's happening on the other end of the floor. The one thing with Jonathan Kaminga, it's not, yes, it's pretty glaring that he only had a bucket last night and 1 rebound. The rebounds, we know going into the season that he's got to improve. Mm-hmm. But it's defensively is where I think the disconnect is with Steve Kerr at the end of the day and the Golden State Warriors. Because I think he's good on the ball. He's always been a good on-the-ball defender. But just keep an eye on him when the ball's reversed. And he's not Jordan Poole-esque, but he gets a little disinterested. And it's about the rotational defense. It's about helping out. It's about all those things that not only Steve Kerr, but Draymond Green, you talk about playing alongside Trayce Jackson-Davis. If you want to play alongside on that front court with Draymond Green, you sure as hell better know what it is that you're doing defensively. And it entails a lot more than just on-the-ball defense. And I think that might be as much, if not more than anything else, why he might be a guy that could be sort of the odd man out.
Well, and I think you're spot on in regards to maybe the peripheral defense. Like when he gets a guy in his chamber, he can keep him in front. But there was a play early last night, and again, it's, I think one of the reasons the starting lineup has fallen behind, even then they've gone on to blow both Utah and Portland out. But there was a play in transition where the Jazz are coming up, and Kaminga just floats with the guy to the corner, and it leaves Keontae George just steps into a wide open wing 3, and Draymond's telling him to go up. He rotates, but he rotates too late. And those are the kinds of plays that, look, it's early in a game, you're playing in a flow, or you're trying to get your flow against a Utah team that's pretty disjointed and just wants to make it a track meet. But those kinds of plays are ones that you just look at and you say, well, like that's a mistake. I also think in transition and in general, it's funny to me how when you think about Kaminga, you think about him being a downhill force, right? Just a brute bull that can get to the lane at will. Excuse me. But one of the things that I've noticed is he has tunnel vision. He doesn't look for anybody on either side of him when he looks to go downhill. We brought up the play where he missed Hield in the corner. Eventually they got it to him and he made a 3. But there's a play in the first quarter where GP2 is just running naked up the right side. And Kaminga instead just puts his head down, tries to get to the rim. I think he got blocked. But it's like, give the ball up.
Yeah.
And he's done that a couple times now in these first 2 games where it just feels like he refuses either to pass the ball or perhaps he just doesn't see the guy that's alongside of him. There was a play in the Portland game where it was even I think it was in half court. He attacks the paint. The defense collapses. Wiggins, heads up play, cuts to the rim, and Kaminga could just dump it off or shuffle it to him, and he doesn't. And I think they ended up getting free throws and, they got points out of the possession. But there's just some of those little things that you wonder, is that ever going to change?
Well, I think it did change because we saw stretches last year where he really took steps and was maturing, was doing exactly what it is that you just pointed out. He was recognizing and getting everybody involved and not forcing it and was drawing and kicking. Whereas early on in his career, he had those blinders on and it's just me and the hoop and that's all I see. And then we saw some growth last year where he was able to recognize other players on the floor and was getting rid of the ball. But now it seems as though he's taken a step back, which tells me that he's in his own head. He's in a little funk here. And I think he's thinking about the contract, and he's not necessarily embracing, nor do I think he fully understands, like, wait a minute, I'm coming out, we got all these guys. Typically with the Warriors, when I got it going, I stay on the floor, and I play a lot. What's going on here? It just looks like it's a little foreign to him. Whereas you have a bunch of guys, as I've mentioned, that not only buy in, but this is essentially what they've done throughout their entire career. The DeAnthony Meltons and the Moses Moodys and the Kyle Andersons and even Buddy Hield. They play in spurts. So they're like, yeah, this is what I do. Let's go. I think this is more of a transition for Jonathan Kaminga than it is the other players.
Yeah, and I think that he's clearly playing for the bag. I think he was at times last year, but it was easier to do either because there was other distractions with the team that took away from it, or there were injuries that allowed him to flourish. And I just think that he's playing with a weight that not a lot of players at his age have to play with. And so when I say he's clearly playing for the money, I don't mean that he's selfish, but it's like that him and Josh Giddey were the only two real players in his class that did not get paid this summer across the league. Moses Moody also got paid. And some of that might have been because, look, he wanted more money than he was worth. His agent wanted to get him this. The Warriors didn't want to give him to it. But he's clearly playing for something other than wins and losses right now. And I just feel like that's a lot to put on a 22-year-old. And so I don't think he's necessarily going to make himself money this year. And there's other factors that have to do with it. The second apron that everyone seems afraid with, the lack of money that a lot of teams have at this point. But it just feels like he's playing against two opponents. He's playing against the looming contract and also, of course, his opponent, whatever given night it is. So that's a hard place to be if you're Kaminga.
I do think before, we pencil this guy in as somebody that's not going to buy into what it is that we're doing and not having a good year, he's capable of breaking out for 25, 30 points tomorrow against the Clippers. Like, we do have to recognize that, he still has a wealth of talent, and that's still within him. He just has to grasp. I think what's so difficult for him right now is that he has to realize that the rotational defense and defending so that Steve Kerr has a comfort level with him is so important. And I also think he has to realize that the money will come. Like, let me just buy into what we're doing here. I'll do the little things. I'll rebound. I'll get on the floor after loose balls. And if I have an opportunity, I'll get to the rim and do me. Just let the game come to him, and he'll get rewarded at the end of the day. To me, he's trying to force something that's not there.
Well, and to take it a step further, it's not just the money. It's like the points will come. The stops will come, the steals, the block, everything that he's trying to put into that box score will come if he's patient. And I think that's where I was encouraged by his growth last year, is it did appear that the game was slowing down for him.
Yeah.
And through 2 games, that's not necessarily the case. But I don't think that means he's reverted. I just think he's trying to do it all at one time. And that's hard for any player to do. But the benefit, or I should say the positive of it is, your team has still won 2 games by 35 points apiece. So even when Kaminga is pressing, and you could apply this, I think, to other players too. It's like, all right, well, Curry hasn't had a big game. Kaminga obviously hasn't looked spectacular through 2 games. Draymond Green, outside of, I think, 1 quarter against Portland, hasn't really put his fingerprints on everything. There are players that haven't done what, say, Buddy Hield has done, and the Warriors are still 2-0, and they ran away with 2 wins against 2 teams they should have beaten. So that's why I'm excited about this upcoming week, especially in regards to Kaminga, is like, all right, the Clippers, they actually got some wings that both you have to defend as well as score on. The New Orleans Pelicans, you're going to go against Trey Murphy, who just got paid. They have a bevy of wings, Brandon Ingram being one of them, that can attack you and take advantage of you. So I think we're going to learn a lot about Kaminga through these next 3 games, all of which are at home, and I look forward to watching or being at. But you're right. He's off to a forceful start to begin his season, and I think that hopefully he'll learn from that.
Zion healthy?
I don't think
he didn't play in the last game.
He didn't play opening.
But I think it's day-to-day, so he could be in uniform.
He's always day-to-day. Dude, the NBA is such a joke. Like,
Joel Embiid is a joke.
Well, what the Sixers are doing is a joke. Yeah. They're basically trying to shrink his season. And I realize Paul George got hurt in preseason, but it's like, I don't know. Joel Embiid is trying to lengthen his dominance, but I don't really know what it's for. Is it because he just got paid 3 for, whatever, hundreds of millions of dollars this offseason? Is it because he's trying to keep himself healthy for the playoffs? Is it because he's just not really interested in playing basketball at the beginning of the year? Kawhi Leonard's out for an indefinite amount of weeks. Joel Embiid is out. Zion Williamson is maybe play, maybe he doesn't. There's just, dude, I was looking at the injury report last night before the Jazz game because I saw, Curry and Draymond had contusions or something. They were questionable. They played. But other teams got like 5 guys out already. It is game 2 of the NBA season. Memphis Grizzlies had like 4 dudes that were out. What are we doing here?
But John Morant.
What are you doing this offseason?
John Morant and Desmond Bain could be the sleeper backcourt that people need to keep an eye on. I like it. Ja's healthy. I love that.
No, I do too. And one, they were obviously really good before he decided to get, gun happy. But on the other side, look, we got 1 hour left here on Warriors this week. We're taking your calls at 888-957-9570. Also the number for the Comcast business text line. Is someone like Jonathan Kaminga, is that a question you have about this team, or does it sort of fall under the umbrella of, well, they're trying to play 12, they're trying to feature a lot of different guys, and right now, he's just going to have to take a step back. Everyone's going to have to take a step back and do what Buddy Hield is talking about in sacrifice. 888-957-9570. Evan Giddings, Dan DeBone. We're back after this on Warriors This Week.
So, how's your research going?
Surprising. After I figured out the top-rated TVs in our price range, I went shopping for deals.
And who's the best?
It wasn't the internet, and it wasn't the warehouse club.
But?
It was video.
Yeah, I mean, just like Gary Payton II, call courtesy of Tim Roy, voice of the Warriors here on 95.7 The Game. There's more than meets the eye with Dan Devone and Evan Giddings. You know, we have other interests besides the hardcore X's and O's sports knowledge. You know, you might catch Dan down at the Opera House by the Civic Center. You might catch me out in Oakland at a comedy show. We're all over the place. You know, this isn't just what we do. We go out and live, in addition to, of course, talking about the Golden State Warriors.
I got to be honest.
Well, turn your mic on first.
I got to be honest with you. I try the opera, and I have been to the New York Opera House, which is amazing. But the opera is just, it's boring, man. It just is. It's just, you know, and it's funny because it's almost as though you can go see Carmen, and there'll be moments where
San Diego,
you'll be locked in and you'll enjoy it, and then you nod off and you fall asleep you nod off for like 20 minutes, and then you pick it back up. But that's almost sort of baked in when you go to the opera. Like everybody, it's not just me. Everybody, you look around and everybody picks their spots where the eyelids get heavy. Yeah, and you just you crash for a little bit, and you come back and you pick it up and you doze and you come back. It's 4 hours of hell.
Now, is it true that you have to? I don't know. It's like black tie or
no. It's got
business casual,
especially in San Francisco. The symphony and the opera in San Francisco has become, and I don't go frequently, but it's much, much more casual than it was, say, back in the day. Yeah, no, there's none of that.
Well, but in a place like New York, when you're in the Mecca, I mean, I'm sure you got to look suited and booted. You got buttons on, right?
I do, but
show up in a white tee.
You can get away with it out there in New York. Yeah, we've sort of lowered our standard across the board when it comes to that sort of stuff, man.
Oh, shout out the country. I think it's like it's not like the Intuit Dome, where you have to be wearing Clippers gear to be above the wall.
So I just got a quick story, and then we'll get back into the Warriors. So when I was a kid, or I was much younger, like the LA Forum is where you wanted to be when Magic Johnson was doing his thing, right? And they were winning championships, and it was James Worthy, and it was all those boys, Cooper, and that star-studded cast, including Byron Scott. And so the Forum Club, inside the LA Forum, I'm telling you, this was where it happened, all right? You talk about the quintessential pretty Southern California men and women was all going off at the Forum Club at halftime and after the game. But after the game, you had to buy a ticket or you had to be invited because it was all VIP because the players would make their way up to the Forum Club. That's where Magic did a lot of damage back in the day. But I was in college.
Why do you think he was always smiling?
Yeah, the University of Arizona. And somehow there were two highlights in my life when I was a young man. Somehow we got into the Playboy Club briefly, and then we got into the Forum. And here I am in my shorts and my K-Swisses, no socks. Got a hole in my pocket, maybe $8. And there was this most gorgeous woman at the bar. And I remember my buddies were just like, nah, you won't Devone. No, what do I got to lose? And I looked like I was 14. So I said the stupidest line. I'm like, hey, listen, I don't belong, but are you serious? Are you Miss America? And she giggled. And I was talking to someone so out of my league, and it had to be 15 years. She was like in her 20s, and I was a teenager. And I was like, this is the most amazing thing in the world. And she's looking over my shoulder and she's smiling and she says, well, meet my fiance. And it was Mitch Kupchak, who was the GM of the Los Angeles Lakers. I think he was playing at the time. And he's 6'9", just this broad shoulders, just sort of giggled at me. And there I am, like this guy in a T-shirt and my shorts. So fast forward, WWE some 20 years later, and now I'm a grown man, and I'm looking for an apartment and a place to stay in New York in the Upper East Side. Somebody says, you want to hook up with this realtor, and this woman, as we get to talking, is much, much older, but still very pretty. And we're going from place to place, and she says, yeah, I'm from LA, I went to UCLA. I go, yeah, we get in talking about the Lakers. And then she goes, yeah, I was engaged to Mitch Kupchak. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, I think I hit on you when I was like 18 years old. Here we are some 30 years later, and she's this powerful realtor broker out in New York City. So we proceeded, once we broke the ice, we somehow, it was like an 85-degree day, summer day in New York City, and we went to a cigar bar. A cigar bar in New York and anywhere else. Mm-hmm. It's just like, first of all, you go downstairs, and you're sub-level and you can't see your hand in front of your face, and I'm hitting on a cigar, which I don't smoke cigars, with this woman who was my realtor. But there you go. All right.
Dude, you could tell me that you were alongside Neil Armstrong at the moon landing, and I think I'd buy it. Every single time I'll just, by the way, I've been out to, the Forum Club, snuck in there, talked to Mitch Kupchak's wife. What was the one?
Well, there's a lot of people that did that. Actually, who probably knows it better than anybody is probably like Steiny. I guarantee you, when he was beat on the Warriors, no doubt he was at the Forum Club.
Potentially. No, there's all these kind of random things that you forget about, places you've been. Like this was Vegas, but we were actually at a cigar bar. And
are you into cigar bars?
Not
I think it's
really.
The most disgusting thing in the world.
No, not really. It was a cigar bar, but it wasn't a traditional one. Like, it was up on the rooftop, so you could go outside if you needed to take a break. By the way,
it's like somebody has one of those fog machines for effect in like a movie studio. Like, you just can't see all this. It's smoke,
which is what the entire city of Las Vegas smells like. The moment that you get off the plane, you get hit with secondhand high, and you get a headache that I haven't shook for the last week. I'm still trying to get over it. The amount of cigarette and cigar smoke that's been puffed in my face.
That's me, by the way, the two senses when I think about Major League Baseball: stale peanuts and cigar smoke. And I'm like, all right, this is Candlestick. I'm at a baseball stadium. Those are the two things that I recognize. That immediately my senses go baseball. Sorry to interrupt.
I don't know. When I think of baseball, I think of Copenhagen Straight. That's tobacco.
I know.
Let's break this up with a member of the Dolphin Club. Lisa from the Dolphin Club is calling into Warriors this week. Wants to talk to Dan Devone. Lisa, how are you? Please.
Lisa, did you swim from the Bay Bridge to the to China Beach?
No, not today. Last week I did swim from the Golden Gate Bridge to the Bay Bridge, and today we had the Alcatraz swim, the Dolphin Club Alcatraz swim.
Yeah,
sweet.
I was there this morning, and I saw everybody getting loaded. So how did you do? Did you do it? And what was your time?
It was a beautiful day. Beautiful. My time was pretty good for an old lady, 56 minutes. And it was the Golden Gate Bridge was in my sights the whole way, and it was just gorgeous.
So when you left Alcatraz, did you get swept up in that ebb that tries to push you out the Golden Gate Bridge?
Well, that's what we were in a slack. They try to time it so you go between the ebb and the flood. And so we were at the very end of the flood when we started, and I felt like we were getting pushed to the Bay Bridge. And then, you just feel like you're not getting anywhere for a long time. And then at the end, the ebb kicked in, and we were able to make the opening and get back to safety.
Lisa, just so that our program director, a man by the name of Matt Nahagian, doesn't call in and reprimand me, can you just ask a Warrior question, or do you even know who the Warriors are?
I love the Warriors. Man, I am a huge, huge Warriors fan. I used to go in Oakland all the time, and I used to go back in the 80s, and so I know they won last night, but I had to go to bed early, so I couldn't watch it because I actually watched some of the World Series.
Are you feeling optimistic at all about the Warriors this season, Lisa?
I'm excited about the Warriors this season. I love the Splash Buddies, and I'm impressed with Trace Jackson Davis is looking so much bigger and stronger.
See, she's not just somebody that jumps in the water and swims from Alcatraz all the way to back to land, which is, I want to say 2.5, 3 miles, Lise.
Oh my God.
Well, today was about 1.5 miles, but the Golden Gate to the Bay was 6.5.
That's crazy.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Lisa.
That's what I say.
Yeah, no, you are a true athlete.
I'm going to go home and watch the Warriors game on I taped it.
Yeah, so Lisa stops me at the Dolphin Club, and so she listens to us. Oh. And she knows her stuff. I'm giving her a hard time. She actually knows her sport. She knows what's going on.
So she knows who Buddy Buckets is, the nickname that Dan evidently bestowed upon Buddy Hield earlier today, Lisa.
And Lisa just says, hey, listen, she's telling me, I'm like, you got to call in. Like, it's incredible. I mean, I don't want to give away Lisa's age, but she's no spring chicken like none of us are. And she does some of the most demanding swims going from the Bay Bridge. Lisa, you went from Bay Bridge to Golden Gate?
No, the other way. Golden Gate to Bay.
Okay.
And then I went from China Beach to, the aquatic park. That was a hard swim, too. I almost hit the bridge. I hit the Golden Gate Bridge. The current took me right at it. I missed it by about a foot.
Wow.
But I'm a huge 95.7 The Game fan, and I listen pretty much every day. And I love you guys, and I'm really glad to know Dan at the club. So thank you, and go Warriors.
Right on, Lisa.
We love you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing Devon with us. I mean, I know he's at the Dolphin Club at 3 a.m. every single day.
That's
so
not happening. Although today, riding in, like I rode my bike into the club, it was like a painting.
So do you use this show just as an excuse to get out of swimming to Alcatraz? Or
I want to do Alcatraz, but there's a potential you could get caught in an ebb or the current is working against you and you're in the water upwards to, like, she was in the water for almost an hour. Think about it. The water is like 55 degrees, 57 degrees. Could you be in? I can't. Like for an hour, 57-degree temperature, they'd have to pull me for hypothermia. And they have pilots that pull people regularly that either, first of all, you get the claw. Suddenly you can't swim and your hands just forms this claw and they start to turn blue, your fingers. And so a pilot will pull people like, we got to get you out. And immediately you're rushed to the sauna and resuscitated.
Dude, I can barely get in the ocean for 5 minutes. It's so damn cold.
Yeah. So
although I don't use a wetsuit. But, dude, especially now that, we just talked about the cigar and cigarette smoke. My lungs are probably fried. I don't know if I can be sucking wind after 15 minutes.
Any stories from Vegas, or is everything sort of on the up and up? Was this?
Well, I mean, nothing too nefarious. We were pretty tame. Although there was a tattoo involved at around 2 a.m. on the last night. I didn't get it, but I'm not going to shout out my boy who did. But
not a name, right? Remember we talked about this. Never get a name.
Well.
Oh, man. Come on. Get your boy in line, too.
It was a bachelor trip. Apparently he feels really good about this woman. That's the kiss of death, though. Once you get the tattoo of the initials or the name, it's got to be like an item or an image or just something that you can play off of. Because if you're getting...
Did he get this on his lower back?
Kelsey. No. No, I think he got it on his wrist. But let's say you're getting Kelsey. Okay, well, that's pretty hard to spin. Hey, who's that? Oh, it's my ex-wife. But if you're getting, like a tree, well, maybe you can, it's representative of, let's say they're from Oregon, right? The big foresty, nature outgoing, doorsy people. So let's get a tree. That way, eventually when this wedding, and I hope they're not listening, doesn't work out, that you can play it off as, well, I'm big into the outdoors. I got it a long time ago, but it's representative of the roots that I have throughout my life. If I was to get a tattoo, I don't have any ink. I got pretty decent skin. I don't want to ruin it. But if I was to get a tattoo, the last thing I would do is get someone else's name.
No.
I mean, I love you, Devon, but sorry, Double D is not going anywhere on this backside.
I had a friend of mine. His name was Double R, Rick Robertson, and he was a big radio personality in Seattle. And he had me on his show once, and he made a bet with the Seattle Storm that they would never win a WNBA championship, and of course they did. And the bet was he had to get the Seattle Storm tatted on his ass, like a big Seattle Storm on his butt. And Sue Bird made sure of it too.
Oh,
so he walks around to this very day with Seattle Storm with him for life.
That is unbelievable. All the tattoos that I think the sports ones are fine. I don't really mind if you have a championship. It's not my taste. Like I'd never get I don't know, like let's say an Oakland Athletics logo. I love the A's and they're gone, but I would never get an Oakland A's logo.
You don't want that elephant on your face?
No, Stomper would be reserved. I think it'd be like a calf position. But there are some people that will get tattoos of championship or to, memorize or, I don't know, they will get championships before they happen. Like that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. To call your shot and get, like, there are people that probably have Golden State Warriors 2023 NBA champions out there. You can't do that. There was a couple people actually.
How do you explain that away?
That last year got Niners Super Bowl tattoos. You can't do that. Man. Or you got to be able to cover it up or play it off or just torture skin. I don't know what people do nowadays, but that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I'm with you. There's a great story about, you talk about a premature celebration. This is with the ball went through Buckner's legs. 1986 World Series and the Boston Red Sox complete collapse.
Scully, right?
2 outs. Yeah, Vin Scully on the call. So with 2 outs down to their final strike, and of course the Mets mounted what is the greatest comeback in the history of the World Series, culminated with, I want to say, was it Gary Carter hit the ball through the legs, to the wickets of Buckner?
I just know Mookie Wilson.
It was Mookie Wilson that hit it. Yeah, the left-hander, Mookie Wilson. So this was on a bar in Queens because I saw it. So with 2 outs, the game's at Shea Stadium, right? 1986 World Series. The Boston Red Sox, who had not won since the curse of the Bambino, going back to the day. And for less than 12 seconds, the scoreboard flashed, "Congratulations, Boston Red Sox, World Series champions 1986." And this guy snapped it, and it still stands in this bar in Queens, right behind the bartenders. It's you talk about your premature celebrations. Be careful.
Well, that's why we're not trying to put the cart before the horse as we bring it all the way back to the Golden State Warriors. They're 2-0.
We're not working with amateurs here, Cam. See what he did there?
They have the biggest point differential through 2 wins in the history of the National Basketball Association. But we're not going to say that this team all of a sudden is ready to go on a run and reclaim their throne as NBA. I can't do it. No, I got to see more.
Yeah, no, of course. But here's the thing, though, Ev. I really don't have an issue if you're out there and you're a Warrior fan and you're totally into this. If you're saying this works, man.
Lisa
we can beat anybody and we can do this for the next 5 to 6 months. First of all, I hope you're right. And the beauty of sports, Ev, you and I and the so-called experts that this isn't going to work have been proven wrong time and time again.
Yep.
So if you're one of those that's all in on this, God bless, go nuts and enjoy this ride. Well, we don't want to sit here and we know better than you, and this isn't it's not sustainable. You can't play 12 guys, and when Steph comes off the floor, who's going to score? Throwing water on somebody's. This is what sports is all about. You're off to a 2-0 start. You're a team where the remnants of winning championships is still hanging around, and you want to drink the Kool-Aid. Go for it. I don't want to get in your way. I really mean that. Go nuts.
Well, and I don't think that people are sipping the Kool-Aid in regards to a championship. That was just kind of hyperbole. But I do think that people are feeling better about this Warriors team because they don't have the anchor of expectation. I don't think anybody was expecting this team to compete for a title going into this season. And, you may not be still, whatever, that's fine. But people are given a clean slate this year as to how they want to root for the Warriors. And that's what I love about this group is that I do think we're going to find more and more about this team every single night. And so it gives us more of a reason to be engaged. It gives us more of a reason to watch this team and learn about them because, Buddy Hield's been the highest leading scorer for the Warriors the first 2 games. Tomorrow, it could be Moses Moody. It could be Jonathan Kaminga. It could be, obviously, Steph Curry. There's so many different ways that it looks like this team has a chance to be successful that it demands your attention. And I think that's why people are so high on this team is because there's not as much baggage. Like Curry said, there appears to be healthy egos on this team. And there appears to be more of a future that, although is foggy, it's not negative. It doesn't look like they're going backwards, which what felt like they had been doing after the championship for the past 2 seasons. This is a new group with some old pieces that are connected to a championship fabric, and now they're being allowed to, with a clean slate, build their own legacy for this season. And so I don't really care that Wiggins has missed a bunch of time in the past 2 years. I don't care that Draymond Green got suspended for 25 games last year. I don't care that Curry's 36 years old now because this team has a blank canvas. And so far, they've painted 2 blowout victories, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I watched Curry play in these last 2 games, and it's almost like this alternate universe. What is this? What team is he on? It looks so different from every Warrior team or some iteration thereof with Curry on the floor. It's like so much is happening that's not involving Curry. Now, Curry gets his and Curry does his part. And obviously that dynamic is going to change as we go forward. But it's so fun to watch because it's just like, all of a sudden they've got these fresh, young bodies, and they got speed and energy. And Curry's certainly a part of this, but he's not the eye of that storm. It's so bizarre watching their last two games as it relates to Steph Curry and his contribution. And you could say the same for the most part as far as Draymond Green is concerned.
Well, yeah, they are, I guess, technically top heavy in that Curry and Green are their best two players, and then 3 through 12 could be different on a given night. Although it looks like Hield, might have a chance to be one of those top dudes. But last year, Curry had to be superhuman for them to win a game.
Else for the last 5 years.
Well, but last year it felt like it was even more drastic. Like there was, I forget what the stat was, but it was when he didn't score 30 points, they lost like 80% of their games. And so like they needed him at an advanced age to be just as good as he was when he was winning MVPs. I don't think that's the case anymore.
Well, okay, now see, it gets back to, again, are we getting ahead of ourselves? Because we need to see it. And we've seen it for 2 games, but this is where, I pumped the brakes a little bit. Buddy Hield's been amazing. But again, are we ready to make that declaration that when Steph's off the floor, or should Steph get hurt, that we now feel good about 8 guys giving me double figures, or Buddy Hield shooting 65% from three-point territory? Like that still, to me, is a question that has to be answered. And 2 games isn't enough.
No, that's true. I agree with that completely. But let's look at the beginning of last season, which, by the way, they started 5-1, 6-2, but a lot of those games were close, and they weren't necessarily against the greatest teams.
Or say they beat Oklahoma twice within that span? Is that?
They beat Oklahoma by a basket
at
game
OKC.
6 or 7 of the season last year. But what I'm looking at are the leaders for those games. Game 1 through game 11, Curry was the leading scorer.
Yeah.
Already through 2 games, he hasn't been, and I don't even know if he's been, well, Portland was up there, but there have been multiple players that can give you maybe not 30-point games, but can be explosive enough in spurts to make sure that he doesn't have to carry the offensive load as much as he did last season. And yes, Portland and Utah, they're not very good. I also agree with the 209 of the Comcast Business text line. It was against Portland and a tanking Jazz team. Let's calm down a bit with the Warriors type. But I do think that...
Shout out Central Valley 209.
See, I feel like you got every single area code on lock. 512. What do you got on that?
San Antonio, Texas.
God damn.
Right?
This guy's good. Austin. But yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What was I saying? Oh, Curry. Dude.
Oh, you started it. Go ahead.
I know.
512. Random. Well, yeah, Curry.
No,
he's been the guy.
He's had to be.
Yeah.
And he will have to be against good teams, but he also had to be that last year against bad teams. And that I do think is a little bit different now.
Yeah. I would say that
they don't need him to score 30 to eke out a win against Portland. They're beating that team running away.
Since Kevin Durant left town, I'd say it's been pretty much his show. And it's been that way. It's been glaringly sort of, more difficult to watch as he gets older over the last 2 years specifically. It's interesting. We talk about Buddy Hield and the big game he had, and we're talking about how, even this as it relates to Klay Thompson and Steph Curry when they're on these heat checks and you just feed them. It seems as though as Buddy Hield has been so effective, but it seems as if it's been in the flow of the game, right? It just seems very organic to me. Now, yeah, you could see that he had a hot hand and people were feeding him, but it wasn't one of those like, well, Steph Curry gets into a rhythm like, watch out, he's going to start hoisting from the logo.
Or end of shot clock, bail me out.
It was just Buddy Hield sort of was representative of sort of this new personality that is the Golden State Warriors. Yes, he erupted for big points, but he did it in limited minutes, and he also sort of seemed to do it within what it is that they were trying to accomplish offensively. It was very organic and within the flow of the construct of the offense. It wasn't as though it was Buddy Hield just going nuts and taking shots with 2 guys on him. I would say that the majority of the shots that Buddy Hield has made have been good looks.
Or good looks for Buddy Hield. I mean, I think he's a gunner, he's a chucker, but he's also a career 40% three-point shooter. So it's not as if he isn't and hasn't proven that he's been a marksman his entire career.
I heard this interesting statistic about him.
Yeah.
Over the last 5 years.
Cam, let me get the pin out for Dan's balloon.
Nobody has made as many threes as Buddy Hield in the last 5 years. And that includes, Evan James, Steph Curry. Are you familiar with this statistic?
I am. I've only heard it a million times since the beginning of the season. But what people...
Apparently, what are we missing?
Well, what people
come on. Don't go there.
So generously to Buddy Hield will leave out is the fact that Curry missed an entire season.
You're nitpicking.
Curry didn't play in 2020. It was funny. Yeah, we were looking at we're just thinking, all right, well, who else would be on that list? Klay, right? Well, no, he actually missed 2 seasons. Yeah. It's probably like... Who would be up there as far as
Harden.
3-point makes? Yeah, it'd be Chuckers. It'd be James Harden, maybe like Tatum. I think the year that Klay led the league in threes, Tatum was second. Tatum's shot a lot in the last 5 years.
You mentioned Tatum. And so when we're talking about this Warrior team and you have got to play, you've got to earn your minutes, right? I think, is that fair?
Yeah.
Because Curry will bench you and he really doesn't care. And if you want further proof, look at what it is that he did to Jason Tatum. A guy who was fresh off the MVP of the NBA Finals, and it's game 1 of the Olympics, and we're facing Serbia. Sorry, I don't like you in this matchup. You're going to sit. So if you're a Golden State Warrior, you better rest assured, my man, you need to play well, because if Steve Kerr can sit Jason Tatum, he sure as hell can sit your ass.
Well, and that's why, maybe it's not the fact that Kaminga isn't playing well, an indictment of Kaminga himself, but maybe Kerr just doesn't know how to use him. It's like Derek White was getting more minutes than Jason Tatum. I don't think anybody would tell you that Derek White's a better basketball player than Jason Tatum.
Therese Halliburton, he was DMP'd in 2 of those games.
Yeah, but he was fine with it. He was just happy to be there. Found a couple French girls in Paris and was just kicking it all night. That dude was there for the vibes and just had to have a good time, pick up a gold medal on the way out of the door. Jason Tatum actually wanted to play. And Steve Kerr let him know very early on, sorry, buddy, if this is a 12-man roster, you're number 10 or 11.
Did you think Steve had the sort of stones to do something like that?
Yeah. Played Anthony Lamb over, I don't know, Ty Jerome. If Steve Kerr thinks that he can, whether he's right or wrong, if he thinks that a player can help him win, that player's going to play. That's why I think that on this team, I have my worries about, well, Moody is forcing the issue, for example. Like Moses Moody is playing well enough that Kerr's going to have to find him minutes. But coming into the season, if you'd told me that like Lindy Waters was going to get more minutes than Moses Moody, I wouldn't necessarily be shocked if Steve Kerr felt like that was going to help him win. Now, that's not going to happen. But my point is, like, if Kyle Anderson is going to help the Warriors win, he's going to play. He might play more than Kaminga on some nights if Kerr thinks he's best fit for it. That's why GP2 plays as much as he does as a 6'2" power forward.
When you think about the Warriors this year, there's no liabilities defensively.
By the way, Curry, Hield, Doncic, Tatum, Van Vliet. Last 5 years.
Vliet. Pride of Wichita State. And he got paid.
Shock him.
So, or Shaka, as we like to say in the islands. Throwing you up.
Well, the Wichita State Shockers.
No, I know.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Shaka Smart.
Shaka Smart, he was named after Shaka.
Really?
Yeah. No, I totally made that up. I had no idea.
I was like, wow, that is a pull, dude.
Who are his parents?
Yeah.
So I think that, last year when you looked at this team, I always go back to this, that there were holes defensively. You would say, oh, Klay Thompson is, back from the injuries, he can still light it up. Yeah, but he became a serious liability on the defensive end. And the same with Chris Paul. Chris Paul is just, there's nothing, you're 40 years old playing the point guard position in basketball. There's going to be holes defensively. And I think when they ran out of gas and what became really glaringly apparent was in that ugly loss to Sacramento. And those two guys, I still remember Harrison Barnes hunting out Klay Thompson. And the same with Keegan Murray. Like, put me on a switch with Klay. I want to go at him. Can you imagine that 10 years ago? No. Klay Thompson was the best. He'd lock you up. But they don't have that. And go through the roster now. Who would you say that about? Who would you say that this is an area of concern defensively? Like, there's nobody. They're all two-way players, if not guys who are just exclusively defensive specialists. a.k.a. GP2 and Kyle Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, there are weaker defensive players, but you're right. There's not glowing mismatches every single lineup they put on the floor. Last year, it did feel like there was people that you could abuse. In fact, not just one. Like, if you have 4 defenders on the floor, you can largely get by, even for teams that switch a lot. But the Warriors had 2 or 3 guys that would just get abused. And also, I do think that your boy, Trace Jackson Davis, because of how much easier he makes Draymond's job, you're not worried as much about their protection at the rim as you have been in years past. And I think that's a big reason why they were good down the stretch of last year. Like we talked about Curry taking a step back. He took a step back statistically after the All-Star break. He had his worst shooting percentages from the floor, and the team was able to actually win a lot of basketball games because they played good defense. And so I'm glad that this summer they lean more into that than just trying to find more firepower. I think they stayed the same offensively. Maybe they took a little bit of a step forward. I'm not sure yet. But defensively, you're right. They have taken leaps and bounds.
If I was again, who knows? Because it just depends on who's playing well. But if we were to make somewhat of a handicap or an educated guess right now.
Prediction time?
The middle of the latter part of the season, who do you think gets marginalized on this team? If I was to go through, again, Draymond, Kaminga, Trace Jackson Davis, Steph Curry's not going anywhere, Andrew Wiggins, Podziemski, Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson, Moses Moody, DeAnthony Melton, Kevon Looney, GP2, Lindy Waters, Guy Santos. Well, forget about Lindy Waters and Guy Santos. If somebody just sort of is on the outside looking in with high regularity towards the latter part of the season, who do you think it is?
That one's tough. I do think the player whose minutes are going to fluctuate the most is Jonathan Kaminga. Yeah. And it's because he's playing 25 to 30 minutes now. But if you told me in a month he's playing 15 to 20 minutes and coming off the bench, I wouldn't be shocked. I think people are not going to be happy with how much, say, Moses Moody is used. But if we're looking at candidates to move into the starting lineup at the 2, I think we talked about it earlier. The 2 guys to me that are most well-equipped to help the starting lineup at the 2 spot, which would move either Wiggins or Kaminga to the 3, it would be Moses Moody or DeAnthony Melton. So, I think there are a lot of players on the back end of the roster that have room to gain more minutes in this system. The guy who's going to be up and down all year, and we're going to have a lot of conversations about, is probably JK.
I can see maybe a couple of guys. I can see Kevon Looney and maybe DeAnthony Melton gets squeezed just because other guys are playing well. I could see there's a scenario where potentially Andrew Wiggins, if he climbs back into a hole and becomes the Andrew Wiggins and disappears again for a lengthy part of the season, then maybe he's, because there's so many guys that you can replace them with right now. Like if you're going to be, Andrew Wiggins probably knows this. Like if I become that guy again, I'm going to lose minutes. I'm going to lose my starting spot.
That I agree with, but I also think that Kerr generally leans more towards the veteran players.
That's true.
Than the younger ones.
Yeah, but hopefully he learned something from a year ago, because it took way too damn long. Listen, if I could see that Podziemski needed run a lot earlier and Trace Jackson Davis, then certainly I think that the same holds true for Steve Kerr, and he should have been able to recognize that.
That's fair. Well, I do want to take a quick break now. I want to get Cameron Williams into this conversation. So on the other side, Devone and Williams will take you the rest of the way here on Warriors This Week. As we take a quick break, step aside, be back for our final segment. Again, 9 to noon every single Saturday. Warriors season is here. We are back on 95.7 The Game with Warriors This Week. We'll take one final break and get you in with Devone and Cam on the other side.
Valvoline Instant Oil Change is your
Now back to Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game.
Another blowout victory by that of the Golden State Warriors, tearing apart both Portland and running away and hiding from the Utah Jazz. Both games, by the way, on the road. It is Dan Avone. It's Cam Williams. We just heard Tim Roy on the call. How's Tim treating you, by the way, Cam?
Tim's been great. He's been really good. They've been showing me the ropes, him and RC. It's been a great learning experience. I mean, some parts were a little bit rocky because I'm new to this, but for the most part, overall, they welcomed me into their family. Feels like home, and they've been guiding me all the way through.
That's good to hear. And if he's giving you a hard time, you let me know, man. I will have words with that, man.
Got you.
You don't be messing with Cam Williams. All right, let's take a couple of quick calls before we get out of here. We'll start things out with NTO out in Washington. Wants to talk about the Warriors. What's up, NTO?
Bro, it's D from D.C., man, not NTO. What's up with you, Devon?
Oh, there he is. What's up, my man? Oh, Washington. Oh, God. I was thinking Washington State. What's going on? Where you been, by the way? Dude, how dare you?
This is your favorite coconut, man. This is your favorite coconut.
I know, but where you been? I haven't heard from you in a while. And let me tell you something. When I'm on the air, I expect you to be in the lineup every damn day I'm doing this show. But you've been MIA.
Nah, bro, I've been listening to you, man. I just decided not to call because, there was not much to be happy about as it relates to the Warriors. However, I think we have a different team in our hands, man. How do you feel about this roster, Dan?
I mean, I just don't – I have to see more. I mean, I get excited about it. It's fun. There's a lot to enjoy, but the sustainability – I mean – do you think that this is something that, if we're to do this show 4 months from now, we're still talking about playing 12 guys and blowing out teams?
Well, you know what? I feel the same way as you do. However, there's one thing that we cannot argue about. The energy around the team is a little different. I think, as you know, in order for the system that Kerr runs, for it to be a success, the energy has to be very positive, right? Guys have to be willing to sacrifice their games. They have to be willing to make passes. They have to be willing to defend. They have to be willing to just to make plays, right? I think we have that in this current group. Now, can it be sustainable? I guess we will see. Me personally, I'm waiting until Game 10 to actually to see exactly how far this game can go. All I need to see is 10 minutes.
You know what? As far as the energy and the buy-in, you're absolutely right. That is different, and that's one of the most noticeable things when you watch this team. You can tell, and it's palpable, that this isn't the same Warriors we've watched over the last couple of years, and who knows where the hell they'll end up at the end of the season, but it is different. It's a different personality, and you could see that they're all, as they like to say, pulling from the proverbial same rope. What's up, Cam?
So I was thinking that because Steve Kerr was saying that they wanted to get more scrappy with their defense in the offseason, right? And we don't know what this 12-man rotation is going to look like, so we might as well just call them the mystery gang if we're thinking about Scooby-Doo. If they're going to get real scrappy out there on defense, okay. But then we don't know what's going to happen with this 12-man rotation and how long it's going to be. But it's looking good right now just within these first two games.
No doubt. Let's wrap things up with Gene. Let's get out to Oakland. Gene, what do you got, my man? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. So I just tuned in, so what I'm going to say, I'm sure has been covered already, but I'm going to say it anyway. Yeah, I'm loving this team. We do have to wait and see whether we start playing some real teams, but they're exciting, they're fun. But I do have an issue with this starting five. They look kind of clunky, slow, and you got a problem with Curry kind of typically having these slow starts now. It takes him a while to get going. So, that leaves Andrew Wiggins, and he hasn't quite got it going yet. So I think that's making it a lot harder for Kaminga to do his thing. I'd like to see him come off the bench. I do like the idea of replacing him with DeAnthony Melton or maybe Moody. But I'd also like to see a little bit of Hield and Curry out there. Hield is going to open things up for Curry, and I don't know. Could be really exciting. I mean, without Hield, we wouldn't have had these huge victories these first two games. So I want to see more Buddy. I want to see Kaminga in a more comfortable situation, and I want to see just how this all plays out.
Yeah, and I actually think it's the other way around. I think it might be Steph Curry that's helping out Buddy Hield, because when those two are on the floor, and if you notice, Steve Kerr makes a point of it that those two get run together because it's sort of pick your poison. As everybody, we talk about and throughout that phrase, gravitational pull, and everybody wants to go to Steph Curry. Well, I don't know that Buddy Hield has ever had this many open looks. We've seen Buddy Hield make shots like this before, but I don't know that he's been in an offense or he's been in a system or a scenario where he's been able to sit there, set his feet, and get good looks. I'm trying to think about any bad shots that he's had during this run, and I can't think of any. So a lot of it is just he's been the product of the system and also Steph Curry specifically.
Yeah, and I'd add that, seeing all of his experience being a top, shooter for threes and things like that, he's really solid and he's really melting into this system. He feels really comfortable. And like you said earlier, the environment, something just feels different about this team. And he's meshing well. Like, it seems like he would have fit well with the team even back in like 15, 16, or even 17, 18 with all those guys coming off the bench. He would have fit during any of those times. And there were some people online that were also saying, the Warriors just give it time. You guys are going to see why Buddy's being traded so much. But honestly, I feel like his mentality and his energy, I feel like he'll be here for a while. I don't think he's going to be going anywhere after this.
Buddy Hield fits. Buddy Hield makes sense. Now look, is Buddy Hield going to stay at this clip of hitting at 65% from three-point territory? No. The other shoe is going to drop. It may happen tomorrow against the Clippers where he goes, 1 of 9 from three-point land. It's Buddy Hield. And I would say that holds true for the majority of shooters in this league. Aside from, the great ones, which are Steph and Klay, the majority of shooters are hot, or there's some times where they just are not feeling it. But the difference being is that you're not solely reliant on Buddy Hield. You're just taking what it is that Buddy Hield's been able to provide the first 2 games. Hopefully, Steph Curry gets going. You get something from Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kaminga. This just happens to be Buddy Hield. And this is sort of the construct of this team, that there are so many different guys when you go 12 to 13 deep that can contribute. This isn't about Buddy Hield. And when you talk about Buddy Hield, potentially going back to the Buddy Hield through the 5 teams that he's played for and why he's so well-traveled, well, Buddy Hield, again, hasn't played on a team or in a system where he can be the benefactor of a guy who's just sitting on the other side of the floor and everybody's concentrating on a Steph Curry, or being in a system where when he walks onto the floor, it's not as though where everybody else, where everywhere else he was, everybody's focused on Buddy Hield. No, he's the byproduct of Steph Curry, and he's relishing in that role. But again, this isn't about Buddy Hield, and it's not about Jonathan Kaminga. It's not about Andrew Wiggins. It's about all 12 guys. We'll see, Cam, whether, this is viable forget about, the rest of the year, whether they can get through the next week. But it certainly is fun. And like I said earlier to Ev, we don't need to, we need to break this down and throw water on it that this isn't going to last, or you can't go 12 guys, or Buddy Hield's going to come down to earth. Enjoy it. This is the beauty of sports. We don't know. None of us know. You think this is something that can prevail through the course of the season going this deep, Cam?
Honestly, I think it can, because now Steph and all the other players, they have time to rest. They have a deep backcourt now, like they used to. So the times when we went to the championships, not saying that they're going to go to a championship right now for this season, but they have a chance to have a good backcourt and they could rest and move players around. And it's so flexible. So it's a beautiful thing. I mean, yes, they went against 2 teams that needed to be blown out, but we could see what they can do against some real teams a little bit further down the line. And I do feel confident. I feel something. The energy is different. It's different from last year, this time. And there's not a lot of drama in there right now. It's more clear.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see when they take on the good teams, and especially towards the end of games when you're getting nip and tuck and you can't just start bringing guys in and changing faces. You've got to go with something that's a little bit more stable, especially in the closing moments of a game, what it is that the Warriors do, who's going to be that closing 5. I will say this, that when we think about the landscape of the West, that can the Warriors creep up there? I mean, I've heard some people that are, they're drinking the sauce and saying, hey, this is something that can last. And somebody was on, I was one of the network shows that had the Warriors being potentially a 4 seed. And it had a lot to do with that. Maybe Minnesota isn't as good. Maybe Denver's falling back to the rest of the pack. Now, that bench isn't very good. And Is their window closing? I think as long as Jokic is Jokic, the Joker's still going to dominate. But, we'll see. The one thing I will say, though, is Oklahoma's damn good, man. And they're confident. And that's what happens when young teams that are good get a year under their belt. They come back with some swagger. And I think that's what's going on with OKC.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be a problem for the West. I mean, just seeing how everyone's melting in together like that, they'll definitely be a headache for a lot of these OGs out there.
Cam, what time you got things going tomorrow?
For me, I'm going to be here around 5-ish, maybe, around 5. Even though the Niners are playing from 1 to 4, but I'm going to be here for 5 because the Warriors game. So I got to be here, get here early.
5:30 tip, Clippers. Yeah. Right here on 95.7 The Game. All right, that'll do it for us. For my man Cam Williams and, of course, Evan Giddings, this is Dan Devone for Warriors This Week. We'll see you back here next Saturday and every Saturday from 9 to 12 talking about the Warriors. What else as they get off to the hot start at 2-0 tomorrow. Once again, 5:30 tip as they take on the Los Angeles Clippers in the home opener. All the action can be heard right here on 95.7 The Game. Until then, so long, everybody.
Hey, it's Willard and Dibs for Safeway. Enjoy the